My ex-wife is pregnant with my baby and it's quadruplets. Congratulations, Miss Song, you're pregnant. These words dragged Song Tao straight into hell. The doctor's announcement felt like a heavy hammer striking her chest, leaving her unable to believe it. Are you sure? She had always taken precautions. The doctor smiled teasingly. In all my years of practice, I've never misdiagnosed. Miss Song, you'll need to pay attention to your health in the early stages of pregnancy. The rest of his words faded from Song Tao's mind. As soon as she stepped out of the hospital, she threw the pregnancy test and divorce agreement into the trash bin. She had just received the divorce papers in the morning, and by the afternoon, she found out she was pregnant. It seemed like fate wasn't going to let her have any peace. She was about to get divorced, but it gave her such a huge surprise instead. Later that evening. Earl Club. Have you heard? Mr. Gu is planning to divorce. Is that true? But it makes sense. I've never seen Mr. Gu publicly show any affection for Song Tao. TSK, I think it's because Sister Shenyang came back, that's why Mr. Gu. Sure, the main person has arrived. As soon as Song Tao entered the private room, these words reached her ears. She ignored them, walking quietly to the center of the room and sitting beside Gu Tinghan. She wore a creamy white turtleneck sweater paired with jeans and canvas shoes, her loose sweater contrasting sharply with her long, slender legs. Her seaweed-like long hair was styled in a bun, giving her a fresh and pure look. Song Tao had an alluring gaze, but her other features were cool and distant, with a standard oval face that exuded an icy, elegant aura. Everyone around them wisely moved to the dance floor. Soon, only Song Tao and Gu Tinghan were left in the private booth. Why are you so late? A little something came up. What, husband, did you miss me? Don't forget, we're supposed to finalize the paperwork tomorrow. Song Tao smiled sweetly, her flirtatious eyes drawing people in, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. She was always obedient, never causing trouble, never being difficult. It was exactly because of this that he married her. But now, her obedience seemed to irk him. Dao Dao. His cold voice softly called her by her nickname. Song Tao looked up in surprise, her gaze finally landing on Gu Tinghan. This was the first time he had called her by her nickname. Before she could respond, the strong scent of alcohol hit her face. After the divorce, you'll get nothing. Song Tao's eyes widened in disbelief. Was he drunk? The tone, both threatening and almost like a spoiled child. Song Tao smiled and calmly pushed him away a little. No need. We agreed that I'll leave with nothing. If I took anything from you, people would talk. Anyway, she wasn't the type to be unable to live without Gu Tinghan. Gu Tinghan, however, felt a strange discomfort deep in his chest when he heard this. She agreed too quickly. Gu Tinghan raised an eyebrow, his large hand casually resting on her smooth back. Song Tao gasped but was quickly silenced by his kiss. The private rooms in Earl Club were designed with a hidden resting area for convenience. Gu Tinghan scooped her up from his lap and walked straight toward the resting area. Bang! The sound of her body hitting the soft bed was muffled. Song Tao placed her hands against his chest, breathing heavily. Husband, we still need to finalize the paperwork tomorrow. Don't make a scene. Her soft, affectionate voice was even more irresistible to him. His gaze darkened as he became bolder. But tonight, Song Tao was different from usual. She held her ground, and he couldn't take any further steps. Gu Tinghan raised an eyebrow, puzzled. What's wrong? You don't want to spend the last night together. Although there were no feelings, Song Tao's body always stirred the most restless desires within him. It's not that I don't want to, Song Tao replied, putting on her half-undone clothes, her tone teasing. It's just that if I spend the night with you, I'll probably end up missing you afterward. Gu Tinghan immediately picked up on the unhidden rejection in her words. He didn't like forcing people, and seeing that Song Tao didn't want it, he decided to let it go. In Haicheng, everyone knew that Gu Tinghan was married, but only a very few had actually seen his wife. Gu Tinghan, the heir of the Gu Group, the youngest CEO on the Forbes list, was the man that every woman in Haicheng desired. But unfortunately, she wasn't one of them. In this marriage that was more of a formality, they each got what they needed. She needed money, and he needed a convenient excuse to refuse a political marriage. For 5 years, they pretended to be the perfect couple in front of others, while behind closed doors, they lived their own separate lives. Apart from the obligatory matters, there was hardly any interaction between them. The next morning, Song Tao finished washing up and came downstairs, wearing a silk robe and hopping down from the stairs barefoot. Breakfast was ready, and it was her favorite porridge. The banquet is set for noon, don't be late, Jiu Tinghan said, taking a sip of warm milk. Today was the 80th birthday of Mr. Jiu, her grandfather-in-law, and as his granddaughter-in-law, she naturally needed to attend. Even if it meant presenting her wishes as a stranger. It didn't matter. She had long accepted that their marriage was purely for practical reasons. She needed money, and Jiu Tinghan needed a shield to reject an arranged marriage. These 5 years had been spent like that, living a life of appearances. Today, everything would finally end. Be good, I'll have Lu Yi take you there later. Jiu Tinghan stood up, gently wiping the crumbs from the corner of her mouth, his expression full of tenderness. Song Tao smiled, her beautiful eyes turning into crescent moons, and stood up to give him a light kiss on the cheek. Okay, see you later. Their affectionate interaction didn't seem like a couple about to get divorced at all. As Song Tao watched his departing figure, she suddenly felt a wave of nausea in her throat. Her stomach churned, and when she vomited, only bile remained. The disgust in her heart didn't subside in the slightest. Looking at the woman in the mirror, her expression was distant and cold. The warmth and gentleness that once characterized Song Tao were gone. Instead, what remained was an ice-cold, distant woman. Chapter 2, The Family Banquet. After a long while, the symptoms of morning sickness finally eased, and only then did Song Tao change into a new outfit and head out. The old master's banquet was being held at the family residence. The Jiu family's ancestral home was nestled amidst verdant mountains and clear waters. The traditional Chinese architecture was grand and majestic, with 2 tall stone lions at the entrance to guard the place and ensure peace. From a distance, it was an awe-inspiring sight. A lot of people were expected today, nearly occupying half of the top social circles in Tongcheng. Song Tao had never been fond of such banquets, but today was her grandfather's birthday, so she gritted her teeth and decided to attend. Old Master Jiu had always been exceptionally kind to her, treating her like his own granddaughter. As soon as she stepped in, the first thing she saw was Jiu Tinghan's tall and graceful figure. This man had the ability to effortlessly become the center of attention. Song Tao concealed her expression and walked closer, making her way to the main seat. The main seat was the table closest to the center stage, where all the Jiu family members were sitting. As Song Tao walked toward the main table, people began whispering among themselves. Some even waited eagerly to see her make a fool of herself. She's really out of her mind, daring to sit at the Jiu family's main table. Doesn't she know her place? Look at her, not bad looking, but no brains. That's a position only for Jiu family's legitimate heirs. How dare she approach? Could it be that she's the little concubine hidden by the young master? Don't be ridiculous. Just look at how they interact, they're clearly not close. As Song Tao passed by, the gossip was endless, but she paid no attention. When she passed by Jiu Tinghan, she suddenly smiled and whispered in a tone only they could hear, "Hubby, you look really handsome today." There was a hidden meaning behind her words, and her watery eyes carried a hint of provocation. Jiu Tinghan shot her a sideways glance, then nonchalantly pinched her softly on the waist. Their interaction was subtle, unnoticed by anyone, and they merely brushed past each other. As soon as old Master Jiu spotted Song Tao, his happiness was clear on his face. He warmly waved at her. "Is that you, Dao Dao? Come here. Grandfather." Song Tao obediently sat beside old Master Jiu, and the people who had been gossiping earlier now understood. She must be one of the lesser branches of the Jiu family. The birthday celebration soon began, with Jiu Tinghan giving the speech on behalf of old Master Jiu. Meanwhile, Song Tao sat beside the old man, chatting casually, looking like a happy and harmonious scene. "By the way, Dao Dao, when are you and Tinghan going to have children? I'm getting old, I don't know if I'll live to see it." Song Tao paused with her chopsticks, her smile freezing slightly on her lips. How should she answer? She was already pregnant, but she hadn't decided what to do with the baby yet. "Grandfather, this is something you should ask Tinghan about." Song Tao smiled gently, casually shifting the question to Jiu Tinghan. "Dao Dao, don't lie to me. By the way, come with me." Old Master Jiu affectionately patted her head. During the banquet, he took her up to his study. A while later, Song Tao stood frozen in front of the documents on the desk. Grandfather, what is this? Old Master Gu smiled and said, it's your gift. Look at how Tinghan doesn't he spoil you. You're wearing such simple clothes, and if I didn't know better, I'd think you picked them up from the street. Song Tao glanced at her high-end dress worth 6 figures and felt a vein twitch on her temple. The document before her was for 5% of GUS shares. Though it wasn't much, it would still ensure her future financial security. It was tempting, but Song Tao wasn't interested. When she married, it was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Now that they were heading toward divorce, it made sense for her to leave with nothing. Grandfather, Tinghan has been very good to me. This dress was personally designed by him. As she spoke, Song Tao casually pushed the document back toward Old Master Gu. A look of surprise flashed across Old Master Gu's eyes, followed by a deeper sense of sympathy for Song Tao. This girl was always covering for Gu Tinghan. I've heard about your situation. Don't worry, I'll always be behind you. If that boy Tinghan dares to do anything unreasonable, I'll teach him a lesson. Old Master Gu leaned on his cane, speaking in a righteous tone. Song Tao's beautiful eyes curved into a soft smile, her expression gentle. Grandfather, don't listen to those rumors. Tinghan and I get along very well. As for you, if you give me the shares, my second uncle will be unhappy. Gu Tinghan's second uncle, had always coveted GU's shares and had secretly made things difficult for Gu Tinghan. The Gu family was large and influential, and many people fought behind the scenes for money and power. If he knew that Old Master Gu had so easily given the shares to her, who knew what trouble would ensue? GU's decisions are still in my hands. Dao, if you don't sign, I'll have Libo transfer the shares to you directly. Old Master Gu, seeing that she was reluctant to sign, deliberately put on a stern face. Song Tao knew Old Master Gu's temperament very well. After a long pause, she finally signed her name on the document. She could always return the shares to Gu Tinghan later if necessary. Grandfather, thank you. This sentence was from her heart. Her eyes held complex emotions, deep and unreadable, like a dark swamp. You silly child, my granddaughter-in-law can only be you, Song Tao. Song Tao obediently nodded, smiling softly. During the banquet's intermission, Song Tao left the table and went to the garden. The wine and chatter in the banquet hall weren't her style. However, before she could enjoy a moment of peace, a sharp female voice rang out from above her head. Never seen someone as shameless as you. You're about to get a divorce and still trying to trick grandfather into giving you some shares. The blatant sarcasm reached her ears, and Song Tao turned around to see Gu Tinghan's cousin, Gu Xiaoxiao. Song Tao was about to turn and leave, but Gu Xiaoxiao wasn't going to let her off so easily. A woman who probably just picked up from nowhere, how dare you think you deserve to have GU's shares? Gu Xiaoxiao stepped forward and grabbed her slender wrist, the jealousy in her words obvious. Song Tao's gaze fell on the hand gripping her wrist, her eyes darkening. She wiped the smile from her lips, surveying the surroundings. There was no one nearby. What, you're jealous because it wasn't given to you? Before Gu Xiaoxiao could react, Song Tao quickly twisted her wrist. Despite her delicate frame, her action was enough to make Gu Xiaoxiao's face turn pale. Song Tao tilted her head, watching Gu Xiaoxiao's face turn from green to white, and then back to green. Song Tao, you're crazy. You filthy woman, how dare you do this to me? At the sound of her words, Song Tao didn't loosen her grip. Instead, she tightened it, as though the next moment, Gu Xiaoxiao's wrist would be crushed. Just moments ago, Gu Xiaoxiao had been yelling, but now, unable to scream through the excruciating pain, beads of sweat formed on her forehead. It hurts. Gu Xiaoxiao had never endured such pain, and within moments, she was begging for mercy. Chapter 3, I'm getting a divorce. It's good that it hurts, otherwise, no one will teach you a lesson. Song Tao's eyes sparkled with a playful interest, her casual tone carrying an air of amusement. She stood there, looking down at Gu Xiaoxiao, exuding both carelessness and laziness. Gu Xiaoxiao widened her eyes in disbelief. Was this really the Song Tao she remembered, the quiet, timid one who didn't even dare to speak loudly? Be careful with your words, especially in front of me, Song Tao said, pulling Gu Xiaoxiao close and locking her gaze on the now pale face. Her tone was light, but the atmosphere around her became sharp and oppressive, sending a chill through Ji Xiaoxiao. For the first time, Ji Xiaoxiao felt fear. "What are you two doing?" a familiar male voice came from behind them. Upon hearing it, Song Tao immediately released her grip on Ji Xiaoxiao's wrist. She turned toward the voice and saw the tall, handsome figure of Ji Tinghan. The cold expression on her face melted away, replaced by a soft smile as her eyes curved into crescent moons. "Honey, you're here." All the cold energy surrounding Song Tao vanished in an instant, as though it had been nothing but a fleeting illusion. Ji Xiaoxiao, still stunned, watched as the woman she had just seen exuding power now clung to Ji Tinghan like a small, soft rabbit. Had the Song Tao before her really been the same woman who now eagerly sought hugs? Ji Tinghan's chest was suddenly filled with the familiar, sweet scent of milk that seemed to belong solely to her. For some inexplicable reason, he felt a sense of calmness. "The banquet is almost over. I'll have Lu Yi send you back," he said, trying to brush off the strange feeling rising in his chest, his voice cold and distant. He noticed Ji Xiaoxiao's pale face from the corner of his eye but chose not to ask further questions. "No, you've had some drinks. Let Lu Yi take you back." "I still have something to take care of," Song Tao said, gently adjusting his collar, her refusal calm yet firm. Ji Tinghan saw that she wasn't going to change her mind, so he didn't press the issue. The two of them left the Ji family home, with Song Tao walking ahead. As she stepped out, she spotted a familiar figure. In the fading sunlight, Ji Tinghan's tall silhouette was stretched long. He leaned casually against the car, his cigarette glowing intermittently in the dim light, the smoke obscuring his unreadable face. In her memories, he rarely smoked. "Honey, why haven't you left yet?" Song Tao asked, furrowing her brows slightly, subtly stepping back to maintain some distance from him. "I heard Grandpa transferred some shares to you." Ji Tinghan's deep gaze held a hint of probing, but his tone was casual. He was already aware that he was looking for any excuse to observe her. He didn't understand why he felt this way. It was all so strange. "Yes, Grandpa insisted on giving them to me. But don't worry, honey. I'm not someone who goes back on my word. I've already signed the divorce papers. I'll transfer the shares to you once everything's done," Song Tao said, keeping a safe distance from him as she avoided the second-hand smoke. Ji Tinghan felt a surge of emotions but couldn't bring himself to say anything. After all, he was the one who proposed the divorce. This woman, truly heartless and indifferent. Song Tao smiled gently, her voice soft and sweet. "Honey, I'm leaving now. I've got something to do, so I'll be back later." With that, she walked past him. Ji Tinghan, almost on impulse, reached out and pulled her into his arms. Song Tao gasped in surprise. The sudden sensation of weightlessness made her lose her balance, and she fell into his warm embrace. The familiar smell of tobacco and the sharp, cold scent of his cologne mixed together. "I'll be leaving on a business trip tomorrow. Let us deal with this after I return," he murmured, his arms still holding her. Song Tao couldn't see his expression, but she could feel him tense behind her. It was just a divorce. Was it really necessary for him to be so indecisive? "Okay," she replied softly, though she didn't quite understand why he was acting this way. Half an hour later, at a rundown dock on the outskirts of town, the entrance to a warehouse was secured with a state-of-the-art iris scanner. Song Tao stood in front of the door, the lock clicking open with a soft click. Inside, the warehouse was a world of its own, filled with high-tech equipment that hummed and buzzed as it ran at top speed. The screens displayed intricate data forming a vast transportation network. However, the people inside seemed far from concerned. Some were lounging with their legs propped up, yawning, while others were gathered around a table playing cards. As they heard the door open, they all looked up in unison. Song Tao walked in without a care, smoothly accessing the traffic system and erasing any trace of her arrival. "Boss!" Chi Yang immediately sprang to his feet, running toward her. He was about to embrace her, but before he could, she sidestepped him. "Why are you so hurtful?" Chi Yang pouted, pretending to be upset. Song Tao shot him a sidelong glance but didn't respond. She walked over to a chair, casually picking up some fruit from the table and popping it into her mouth. "I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear?" Chi Yang's curiosity piqued, and he leaned in, eager to hear more. "Boss, I heard you're getting a divorce. Are you planning to share some of that fortune with us?" Boom was the only answer, a sharp slap landing on his forehead. The good news is, I'm getting a divorce, Song Tao said lightly. Chi Yang scoffed, but the others around her froze in shock, mouths agape. Ji Tinghan was rich and handsome. How could she possibly let him go? Though, upon further thought, could any man really tame their boss? And the bad news, someone else asked. Song Tao's eyes darkened briefly, and after a long pause, she opened her lips again. The bad news is, I'm pregnant. Pregnant. The room collectively gasped. What are you going to do about it? You're getting divorced, so you'll probably have an abortion, right? Before the sentence was even finished, someone quickly covered the speaker's mouth. You're pregnant, a cold, calm male voice rang out. Baizhou walked over, his handsome face unreadable, though his narrow eyes concealed a tumult of emotions. Song Tao didn't confirm or deny it, simply nodding slightly. Baizhou furrowed his brows and sat down next to her without saying a word. Even Qi Yang, usually the life of the party, wisely kept quiet. It was well known that Baizhou had harbored feelings for their boss for years. Song Tao had built the largest underground trading organization in Tongcheng, known as their information brokers. If anyone needed information in the dark of night, they knew where to go. I'm not sure whether to keep the baby. But, honestly, I can afford to raise it, Song Tao said casually, opening a carton of yogurt and sipping it. Her appetite had improved quite a bit since she got pregnant. Chapter 4, Equally Matched. Are you sure you want to stay? The Song family's affairs have been almost dealt with. Baizhou, who had been silent on the side, suddenly spoke up, his tone turning cold. So soon? There was a flash of surprise in Song Tao's eyes, but then she suppressed her expression, picked up the laptop beside her and started operating it. Fingers as fast as swift shadows were clicking as they looked at it. Soon, a piece of information appeared on the screen. The Song family is focusing on real estate development this year, and this piece of land in Tongcheng is exactly the project they must take. You have waited for this opportunity for 5 years. Don't you think it's a pity to give it up because of this child? Baizhou said it lightly and calmly, but his clenched fists hanging by his side betrayed him. When Song Tao heard this, his face suddenly turned gloomy. She was the only heir to the Song group and died in a car accident 5 years ago. At least, that's what her aunt Song Yin claimed. But in fact, she was hunted down and drifted to Tongcheng. Because she needed an identity, she married Ji Tinghan. The advantage of a secret marriage is that she no longer has to hide. For 5 years, she has learned to lie dormant just to get what belongs to her back. This child really came at the wrong time. Song Tao remained silent, as if thinking about something. After a while, she raised her head, the worry in her clear eyes was gone, replaced by incomparable determination. I want to keep this child. We have been planning for so long, we just need to be fully prepared. There was no room for rebuttal in her words, and seeing that she was determined, Baizhou could only let her go. Good. After a long while, Baizhu's throat rolled up and down before he uttered these words. Family-oriented. Ji Tinghan's eyes fell on the clock hanging on the wall, and the second hand pointed to 12 o'clock bit by bit. He frowned in displeasure, and for the first time in his life, a hint of impatience appeared on his face, even though he usually didn't show his emotions. Just as he was about to pick up the phone, the butler next to him approached with hesitation. Master, today the hospital sent Madam's medical report and some medicine. The butler held the document in his hand, not knowing whether he should tell him about this matter. After all, they saw how loving and affectionate the two were. Besides, the young mistress is such a gentle person, they certainly don't want the young master and the young mistress to get divorced. After hesitating for a long time, he handed over the report in his hand. What's wrong? He asked casually, but after taking the document, his expression changed instantly. Recalling Song Tao's various abnormal behaviors, Ji Tinghan suddenly realized. Ji Tinghan threw the document aside, and the air around him became heavy. After a long time, Ji Tinghan picked up his phone and made a call. Even he himself did not realize that he had memorized the number by heart. Song Tao's eyes fell on the flashing screen of his mobile phone. He stopped the meeting and gestured to the people around him to be quiet. Hello. Where are you? I'll pick you up. A cold male voice came from the other end of the phone, carrying an irrefutable command. Song Tao's eyebrows twisted together. What's wrong with this man? They are about to get divorced but still entangled. Honey, didn't I say I would be home later? Besides, we are getting divorced. The implication was that Jiu Tinghan was doing this in vain. The people around felt a chill down their spine. They were not used to the boss's delicate way of speaking. Give me half an hour. I want to see you. Jiu Tinghan spoke in a bad tone and hung up the phone. There was a busy tone on the other end of the phone. Song Tao was puzzled. Jiu Tinghan rarely got angry. Could something have happened? I'll go back. After all, they have been married for 5 years and will soon be heading for the forest. It is not worth it to anger him at this time. I send you. Baizhua picked up the car keys and walked out without saying a word, and Song Tao followed him helplessly. Not long after, Jiu family. The high-performance supercar was speeding on the road. When it approached Gu's house, it braked with a handsome long tail and stopped steadily at the door. Jiu Tinghan looked at the black Lamborghini in front of him. He couldn't remember when Song Tao bought this car. Then, through the bright light from the car lights, he could see the man sitting in the driver's seat. Jiu Tinghan searched in his mind, but to no avail. Song Tao got out of the car and walked to Jiu Tinghan's side. She concealed the anger from her brows and smiled gently. Why are you in such a hurry to get me back, husband? Jiu Tinghan didn't answer, his eyes fixed on Baizhua in the car. Their eyes met, hostility surrounding both of them. Who is he? Jiu Tinghan did not answer but asked instead. Friend. Boyfriend. Two voices, one male and one female, rang out at the same time. When Song Tao heard Baijua's self-introduction, her pupils shrank suddenly. After giving Baizhua a fierce look, Song Tao tried to smooth things over with a smile. It's a male friend. It's too late. Go back quickly. But when Jiu Tinghan heard this, a dark light surged in his dark eyes, and the smile on his lips became even colder. How come I didn't know when Madam had such a male friend? The last word of his voice was emphasized, and the heavy atmosphere seemed to be about to explode. Baizhua met those eyes fearlessly, leaning against the car, his voice calm. We're getting divorced soon anyway, aren't we? Song Tao gritted her teeth in hatred, but considering her own image, she kept winking at Bai Chao. At least until now, she is still my wife, and no one else can covet her. Jiu Tinghan's voice suddenly became deep, and the cold words in his voice were like the biting snow in the cold winter, which made people tremble. Baizhua knew when to stop, and the smile on his lips became more provocative. It's only a matter of time. After Baizhua finished speaking, he glanced at Song Tao and then drove away. Jiu Tinghan glanced at her, strode into their house, leaving her with only his back. Walking into the room, her first words were what greeted her. Are you pregnant? Song Tao was stunned, then he saw the medical examination report on the table, and thought to himself that it was not good. Damn it, how could she have neglected this? Jiu Tinghan sat on the sofa, his long legs crossed, tapping on the sofa with his bony fingers. Song Tao nodded, his expression gradually turning cold. She no longer had the patience to waste time with him. It was just a divorce, and it was so fussy. Afraid that Jiu Tinghan would say something, Song Tao stared at him sincerely and seriously. Don't worry, husband. I will definitely be a qualified ex-wife. I will take care of the child myself and it won't delay the divorce. Song Tao spoke every word seriously, with a determined light in his eyes. Upon hearing this, Jiu Tinghan said nothing, his falcon-like eyes fixed on her. She is as sensible as ever. Before Jiu Tinghan could say anything, a familiar female voice came from the door. Tinghan, long time no see. Song Tao looked in the direction of their voice and a beautiful figure came into view. Chapter 5, The White Moonlight in My Heart. Who is this? Xinyan walked closer, her long, smooth black hair draped around her waist, and her white dress made her skin look like cream, making her look extremely beautiful. Song Tao looked at Xinyan calmly. As expected, the red roses at home could not compare to the white moonlight in her heart. With a smile on her lips, Song Tao slightly opened her red lips. Just an irrelevant person. Why are you here? Jiu Ting said coldly, obviously caught off guard by her appearance. I just came back and I'm still a little bit jet-lagged, so I thought of coming to see you. Look, how well said this is. It was the dead of night and we were all adults, so we all understood. Song Tao looked like she was watching a play. The scene of a pair of old lovers meeting each other was really a good show. You guys chat, I won't bother you anymore. For the first time, Song Tao spoke to Ji Tinghan with a cold tone. You are Tinghan's ex-wife, right? Before Song Tao turned around and went upstairs, Shenyang beside her asked. Shenyang glanced at Song Tao from head to toe. On their way here, she had heard the news that Ji Tinghan was secretly married. But so what? Ji Tinghan, isn't he getting a divorce because of her? The gentle words made Song Tao sense the hidden edge. Yes, so I won't delay your reminiscing. Song Tao simply admitted it generously. After all, the two had already signed the divorce agreement, and legally speaking, they had nothing to do with each other anymore. Song Tao tried her best to distance herself from the relationship between them, and Ji Tinghan's expression became more serious. Shenyang looked at the figure walking up the stairs without a trace of reluctance, and felt vaguely familiar. Tinghan, I miss you so much. After Song Tao left, Shenyang sat on the sofa, speaking softly and gently. She thought that Ji Tinghan would still be the same as before, but the next moment, Ji Tinghan's reaction was beyond her expectations. Ms. Shen, please respect yourself. Puff. Inside the room, Song Tao spat out a mouthful of water onto the computer screen. What is the plot direction of this? She had no intention of caring about what the two were talking about, but her uncontrollable curiosity prompted her to hack into the security system of Gu's house. Shenyang was stunned. Wasn't Ji Tinghan getting a divorce because of her? Isn't it because he still has feelings for her that he does this? Tinghan, what are you doing? Shenyang's smile froze on her lips, and a look of hurt appeared on her pretty face. Our relationship ended 5 years ago. If you have nothing else to do, please come back as soon as possible. The implication of this was that Ji Tinghan ordered Shenyang to leave. Ji Tinghan's mind was filled with the scenes of him meeting Bai Zhuo at the door just now and Song Tao trying her best to refute their relationship. I came back this time not only to reminisce with you, but also to discuss cooperation with you on the piece of land in the south of the city on behalf of the Song family. This is the preliminary agreement. We will discuss it tomorrow. Shenyang was humiliated and her face turned red like a burning cloud. She threw down the documents and said goodbye in a hurry. The departing figure looked like someone fleeing in panic. TSK, husband, you are really heartless. Is this how you treat your ex-lover? Song Tao was holding a glass of milk, standing at the corner of the stairs in her pink bunny pajamas, with a look of interest on her face. Ji Tinghan looked up and saw a petite figure. He clenched his back teeth, paced closer, and imprisoned her in a corner. So what do you want me to do with her? He looked down at her, his voice rising at the end, but revealing a sense of coldness. Song Tao tilted her head, not afraid, and looked at him quietly, with a hint of smile on her brows. People outside say that you divorced because of Shenyang, and Grandpa seems to think so too. Otherwise, he would not have transferred 5% of the shares to her and said things to reassure her. Ji Tinghan frowned. What the hell is this? The reason why he chose to divorce was simply because he was tired of a marriage that was in name only and he was tired of pretending day after day. But when she really agreed to divorce readily, he felt uncomfortable. How strange. The photos in your study. Song Tao's eyes were smiling, hinting at something. Ji Tinghan's face became even darker, and after a long while, he uttered a word. You mean the storage room where we keep our sundries? Song Tao. I see. It seems I misunderstood. Good night, husband. As soon as she finished speaking, Song Tao pushed his strong arm. After a long time, the long arm in front of her remained motionless. Song Tao frowned slightly and reminded again. Honey, we are divorced. Her voice turned cold, and impatience appeared on her delicate face. Ji Tinghan's eyes darkened, as thick as ink that could not be dissolved. The formalities have not been completed yet. Song Tao couldn't help laughing and used all her strength to break free from his arms. I have a backup of the signed document. Ji Tinghan, regardless of whether we have the formalities or not, we are no longer husband and wife. What she said left no room for negotiation and was very decisive. The first time Ji Tinghan saw her covered in thorns, he was afraid she must be crazy to do such a thing. After regaining his senses, he let her go, opened his thin lips slightly, and spoke in a calm voice. Good. The next day, Song Tao got up early, looked at the woman in the mirror, and a smile suddenly appeared on his lips. I heard that Song Yun will also be present at today's signing ceremony. It's been 5 years, my dear aunt, how are you? Song Tao's watery eyes were filled with chilliness, and her entire body had an eerie, bone-chilling aura. The signing ceremony for the land in the south of the city. After final screening, only 3 companies had the development rights for this land. Song Yun and her team arrived at the venue early. Song Yun flipped through the documents in her hands with a determined smile on her lips. This was her first project in Tongcheng. She didn't expect it to be a success and she could cooperate with GU. This piece of land cannot be taken over by one company alone. Cooperation can lead to win-win results. Even if they only get a share, there will be huge profits. While he was thinking, Gu Tinghan also led his men in. Hello, Mr. Gu. I have heard a lot about you. Song Yun stood up, extended her hand towards him, with a kind smile on her lips. Gu Tinghan glanced at her, chose to ignore her, and walked straight into the seat belonging to the Gu family and sat down. Someone nearby hurried out to smooth things over. Mr. Gu has misophonia, Mr. Song, please don't be surprised. Song Yun's face became even gloomier when she heard this. She was angry but couldn't show it. She could only endure it and sat back in her seat waiting for the third company to come out. After a long while, there was still no sign of the representative from the third company. Some people had already begun to talk about it, and the staff at the signing venue were even about to disqualify someone, when a beautiful figure caught everyone's sight. When Song Yun saw the person coming, blood rushed to his head. How could it be you? The smile on Song Tao Hong's lips became increasingly cold. Is it so strange that the person you killed appears before you, my dear aunt? Song Tao walked closer, like a killer returning from hell. Hearing the familiar voice, Gu Tinghan suddenly looked up. It's her? Chapter 6, No Mercy. Gu Tinghan's eyes fell on her with an unhappy look, because in the past, Song Tao would smile with curved eyebrows when she saw him, but now, she ignored him. You, what are you doing? Song Yun was furious, and looked at Song Tao with a look as vicious as if it was poisoned, but she soon regained her composure. Xiao Tao, is it really you? Do you know how hard it has been for your aunt to find you all these years? As she spoke, Song Yun's eyes reddened and she stepped forward to hug Song Tao. Song Tao took a step back, a sneer on his lips, his clear eyes revealing a hint of indifference. Aunt, how long are you going to pretend? Would her vicious aunt cry again? These words undoubtedly shocked Song Yun. Not only was her niece not dead, she also knew clearly what happened that year. Song Yun suddenly covered her face and cried, feeling a little emotional. She was thinking about how to smooth things over. If what happened back then was exposed, not only would the cooperation with GU be lost, but even jail time would be inevitable. Tears hung on Song Yun's face, making her well-maintained face look very young. She opened her mouth slightly, her eyes full of pain and heartache, as if she was deeply hurt by Song Tao's words. Xiao Tao, did you misunderstand something? I am your aunt, and you are my niece. Why should I pretend in front of you? Song Tao had a cold expression on her face. She stood in front of Song Yun with a thin figure. After Song Yun finished crying, she chuckled, crossed her arms, looked at Song Yun and said calmly, Aunt, you should know whether I misunderstood or knew the truth. After all, you are so smart that you managed the Song Corporation in an orderly manner after my death in a car accident. You must understand. Song Yun's face became even more embarrassed. Everyone's eyes were on her. They had all been through life and had seen the world, so they could naturally understand the current situation. It was nothing more than stealing something from someone else. I thought I could rest easy, but unexpectedly the owner of the things came back. Hey! I thought it was something else. I watched your parents establish the Song Corporation. Who could have known that something like this would happen? Plus, you were missing at that time. If I didn't take charge of the Song Corporation, wouldn't your parents' hard work have gone to waste? After saying that, Song Yun tried to pull Song Tao's arm with a smile, but unexpectedly the other party dodged it. Song Tao distanced herself from Song Yun. Her face and temperament were a little immature compared to Song Yun, but her confidence and composure were beyond her age, so that she was not inferior to Song Yun, and even had a slight advantage. Really? She smiled faintly, then I have to thank Aunt for taking care of the Song Company for me, but, now that I'm back, I won't bother you with the Song Company's affairs in the future. Aunt, don't blame me. If you continue to manage it like this, the Song family will probably have to change dynasties. After saying that, Song Tao walked around Song Yun and sat in her seat, then calmly flipped through the documents and said, "Let's get started." Song Yun turned around abruptly, staring at Song Tao with eyes full of resentment and hatred. The resentment and greed in her heart spread like a raging fire. She had finally sat in this position, and now she was going to lose it. How is this possible? How can this be possible? Since Song Tao didn't accept her kind words, don't blame her for being rude. The fact that she has been able to hold this position for so many years proves that she is not a pushover. Xiao Dao, you are my niece, and I am your aunt, your elder. How can you talk to me like that? It is only natural for me to manage the Song family. I am also a member of the Song family. Isn't it only natural for me to do these things? Besides, you were so young and didn't know anything at the time. I was the only one who could take on this important task. What's the matter? Xiao Dao, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but you're being a little confused about what's good and what's bad. Song Yun's eyes were full of danger and coercion. She approached Song Tao step by step, releasing all her aura without reservation. If the other party was just an ordinary girl, she would probably be frightened at this moment. But Song Yun miscalculated. After experiencing so much, Song Tao was no longer ordinary. Aunt, if you really wanted to protect the Song family's assets, why didn't you stabilize the company's normal operations as the first thing you did after taking office, but moved the shares instead? The staff originally arranged by father were replaced or demoted. Is this what you call helping? This is not helping at all, it's clearly a blood transfusion. Song Yun didn't expect that Song Tao knew everything she had done. Her face turned pale instantly and her eyes looking at Song Tao became much more complicated. It seemed that she and her father were exactly the same, both of them terrifyingly smart. Song Chuchu, who was sitting aside, had been silent for a long time. The sudden appearance of their deceased, Song Tao, caught her off guard. It was not until now that she came to her senses. Seeing that her mother was speechless after being rebuked by Song Tao, she could not help but speak. Song Tao, you are so heartless. You are really like a dog biting Lu Dongbin, not knowing the kindness of a good person. Mother must have her reasons for doing this, but you are blaming others without even understanding the matter. You have no manners at all. After saying that, Song Chuchu quietly glanced in the direction of Ji Tinghan. Such a cold and noble man sitting here was undoubtedly shining and took away all her thoughts. She didn't want Ji Tinghan to think that she was such a vicious person. Ji Tinghan listened to everything without missing a word, and he understood the cause and process of the incident. When he noticed Song Chuchu's gaze, he pretended nothing had happened and curled his lips slightly. Mrs. Song, you have been properly compensated for helping to run the Song company over the years. It is not a loss. Now that Miss Song, the legitimate heir, has returned, this matter has been settled. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to keep working for others, right? The word work pierced Song Yun's heart like a dagger. Was she just a worker for others in the eyes of others? She was about to retort, but her mind stopped her. Ji Tinghan's status was something she would never be able to reach in her lifetime. If she offended him, her life would not be easy. Song Yun was furious but still forced herself to smile. She turned her head stiffly and looked at Ji Tinghan with a smile, her hands tightly grasping the bag she had just bought, leaving wrinkles on the brand new leather surface. Boss Ji really loves to joke. Ji Tinghan tilted his head, as if he was a little surprised, and replied in surprise, how could Madame Song be surprised? This is just the fact. Speaking of which, Miss Song is really lucky to have you. Such a capable subordinate is really hard to come by. Obviously every word he said was a compliment, but in reality every word was ironic and sarcastic. Song Tao couldn't help but look at this aggressive man. She felt a little touched. They had already signed a divorce agreement and they no longer had any legal connection. Why did he still want to help her? Ji Tinghan immediately looked at Song Tao with a smile in his eyes. At this moment, his interest in Song Tao increased a little bit. It turned out that she had this identity. The already tense atmosphere became even more tense with the addition of Ji Tinghan, making people feel suffocated and they could only watch silently. Aunt. Song Tao turned her head and looked directly into Song Yun's eyes. There was a ripple of light in those beautiful eyes, which eventually turned into an unfathomable depth, and one could vaguely feel the sharpness. Song Yun. The call of aunt just now was the last time she respected Song Yun as aunt. From now on, this blood relationship was irrelevant. She even felt disgusted when calling Song Yun aunt for fun. Some things are beyond your control. Good things come naturally. If you do bad things, you will be punished. Since you don't believe in retribution, let me tell you that retribution does exist. Chapter 7, Mind Your Own Business. These words were like thunder, exploding in Song Yun's brain with a bang, causing all the blood in her body to flow backwards and rush straight to her forehead. What a Song Tao! She was lucky enough to escape last time, but now he showed up in public and dared to challenge her. She wanted to see whether she, who had been dead for a long time, was more powerful, or she, who controlled the lifeline of the Song group, was more powerful. The three parties had different ideas and the contract negotiations ended unpleasantly. 5 years, 5 years. I have been planning for 5 years and finally gained a foothold in the company. But Song Tao is back. She is not dead and is back. Why does God treat me like this? The celadon vase was thrown to the ground and shattered into pieces. Song Chuchu hugged the pillow and curled her feet up on the sofa, frowning as she looked at her mother who was out of control. Mom, isn't it just that Song Tao is not dead? What's the big deal? So many years have passed, and there is no place for her in the company. Even if she is alive and well, what does it matter? As long as the company's directors are on your side, no matter how capable Song Tao is, they can only watch helplessly. After a pause, Song Chuchu rested her chin on the pillow, and said in a sullen tone with a hint of jealousy, "But, what is the relationship between Song Tao and Jiyu Tinghan? Why does Jiyu Tinghan always protect Song Tao? What do you know?" Song Yun was tired of venting and sat on the sofa. Song Tao is now able to represent a third party to negotiate this land business, which means that she is no longer the person who can be manipulated by others. We must not underestimate the enemy. Song Yun looked at her daughter opposite her, who looked absent-minded. From the little girl's reaction when she saw Jiyu Tinghan, she knew that the little girl was concerned about him, and her voice couldn't help but become cold. You are right to remind me of this. We must find out the connection between Song Tao and Jiyu Tinghan as soon as possible. But you'd better restrain your thoughts on Jiyu Tinghan. He is not someone you can easily mess with. Song Chuchu pursed her lips and stood up holding the pillow. I understand. Leave the investigation to me. I promise, I will not let go of any clues of their relationship. The lights in the garage were dim, and there was a flickering light, which made the already dim garage look a bit eerie. Song Tao, the only heir to the Song group, died 5 years ago. The cold voice behind him made Song Tao stop and hold the phone in her hand. Then she heard the voice behind her continue, it turns out that the person who slept with me for 5 years was a dead person. Shouldn't you give me an explanation, Tao Tao? The voice turned low and magnetic, lingering in her ears little by little as the footsteps approached. This was the second time Jiyu Tinghan called her this intimately. Song Tao turned around and Jiyu Tinghan just walked in front of her. Their eyes met. A car horn was heard in the dim garage, and then a beam of car light came from the northwest. Soon, a black sedan was seen driving over. Jiyu Tinghan took a look and saw that the person in the car did not get out, but he could clearly see through the windshield that it was the man who sent Song Tao back. When Jiyu Tinghan thought about Song Tao's entanglement with this man, he felt uncomfortable with a swelling emotion in his heart. Isn't it true that this man knows more about her than her husband does? Mr. Jiyu already knows about it, so I won't hide it from you. Song Tao came today, so she was not afraid of Jiyu Tinghan coming to question her. Anyway, the divorce agreement has been signed, and it's time to end their relationship, which is only in name only. Yes, I am the only heir to the Song group, and I was also declared dead by my aunt Song Yun. However, this does not seem to have any impact on Mr. Jiyu. After all, at the beginning, we just took what we needed. Each takes what he needs. Jiyu Tinghan felt as if a knife had stabbed his heart. This woman could always easily provoke his anger. Miss Song changes her attitude so quickly. 5 years, and all she got was a sentence of each taking what he needs, right? What else? Song Tao's voice turned cold. 5 years of disguise was enough. Now that everything had been exposed, she didn't care about the last bit of window paper. What else does Mr. Jiyu want? Song Tao's change was so fast that Jiyu Tinghan was stunned for a moment. Just as he opened his mouth, he heard Song Tao's colder voice, but I'm sorry, all I can give Mr. Jiyu is each taking what he needs. Can't we just part ways in peace, Mr. Jiyu? Part ways amicably. Ji Tinghan became furious and grabbed Song Tao's wrist and pressed her against the stake. Because he was concerned that she was pregnant, he protected her back with one hand while pressing her. So it was more like he was using the stake to hold her in his arms rather than pressing her against the stake. Suddenly there was a sound of a car door colliding, which was very loud in the dim garage. We cannot allow an outsider like you to interfere in the affairs between us. Get out. Bai Zhuo naturally would not be threatened by Ji Tinghan. He only had Song Tao in his eyes until Song Tao gave him a look. Then he reluctantly retreated to the car. He did not get in the car, but stood beside the car with his fists clenched, ready to rush forward at any time. Song Tao calmed Bai Zhuo down and looked at Ji Tinghan. Ji Tinghan's face looked extremely ugly, like the sky before a storm. This was the first time in 5 years that she saw Ji Tinghan so angry. But what was he angry about? For a marriage that is in name only. Isn't he it funny? Come back with me. Ji Tinghan gritted his teeth, grabbed Song Tao's hand and led her to the car. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind: he must not let this woman go. The two of them must not part ways in peace like this. But he didn't expect that Song Tao actually knew martial arts. He was stunned when Song Tao grabbed his arms and pressed him against the stake. The cold stone pile pressed against his face. Ji Ting smiled coldly and glanced at Song Tao with a scrutinizing look in his eyes. How much do you still know about me? Does my business have anything to do with you, Mr. Ji? Song Tao moved closer, whispering against Ji Tinghan's ear. From an outsider's perspective, their postures seemed very ambiguous and intimate. But only Ji Tinghan knew how cold the sound that entered his ears was, and the expression on the face of the beauty who approached was as cold as ice. Ji Tinghan, for the sake of the 5 years, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business, especially my business. These were the last words Song Tao uttered before getting in the car and leaving. Ji Tinghan rubbed his wrist. The black car was no longer visible in the garage. It had left with Song Tao and the man. Chapter 8. Why me? Have a finger in the pie? Ji Tinghan's face was as cold as ice. He took out a document from the car. The 5 words, divorce agreement, were the most conspicuous in black and white. Don't even think about it. Song Tao, if you provoke me, don't even think about escaping like this. Ji Tinghan moved quickly, and the document was shattered into pieces in a few seconds. Boss, you're back. Chiang turned the swivel chair and looked towards the door. Song Tao and Bai Zhuo walked in one after another. Song Tao seemed to be in a good mood, but Bai Zhuo had a cold face. Chiang shrank his neck and turned the swivel chair back. Bai Zhuo's behavior showed that something bad had happened and he was very angry, so he didn't want to be the fuse. Song Tao eliminated all traces of the transportation system, lay down on the recliner and closed his eyes. It was very strange. As soon as I closed my eyes, Ji Tinghan's angry and embarrassed look appeared in my mind. Song Tao opened her eyes and saw Bai Zhuo looking down at her. She was so happy that she didn't have to close her eyes. She tilted her head and looked at Bai Zhuo. What do you want to say? Although Bai Zhuo's face looked unhappy, his tone was still relatively gentle. What are your plans next? Song Tao thought that since everything was out in the open, there was no need to hide anymore. Soon the news that the daughter of the Song group has been resurrected will spread like wildfire, and that will be the time for her to reappear in front of the public as the daughter of the Song family. Go back to the Song family and take back everything that belongs to me. Song Tao hooked her finger, and Bai Zhuo reached out to take the yogurt on the table, tore off the straw packaging bag, inserted it in and handed it over. Yeah. No matter what you do, I support you. Song Tao raised her eyelids and drank yogurt. She had always known how good Bai Zhuo was to her, but she had always treated him as a brother and had never had any interest in him in any other way. If there was anyone in the world she felt most guilty about, it would be Bai Chao. You support everything? She asked with her head tilted. Bai Zhuo nodded, his eyes determined. Insist on everything. Okay. She threw the empty yogurt box into the trash can, pulled Bai Zhuo's arm and walked out. Then go shopping with me. Now that the daughter of the Song family has returned, she naturally has to choose some clothes that suit her status. All of her current clothes were bought by Ji Tinghan. When she wore them, she always felt as if the label of Ji Tinghan's wife had not been removed from her. Bai Zhuo was stunned for a moment, looking at Song Tao's smiling face with a doting look. Okay, I'll treat you, you can eat as much as you want. When Ji Tinghan returned home, he did not see Song Tao. For 5 years, he could see her every time he came back. It became a habit unknowingly, and that slender figure became an indelible scenery in his eyes unknowingly. Now this scenery is going to disappear, she is going to leave, and from now on she will no longer be in his eyes, but in the eyes of others. When he thought of this, Jiu Tinghan couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. The phone on the table vibrated, the screen lit up, and several messages popped up. He narrowed his eyes, picked it up and opened it, revealing several photos. In the mall, Song Tao and the man were shopping. The man was holding bags in his hands and looking at Song Tao with a doting look. Song Tao also showed a sincere smile on her face that she had never shown in front of him before. The anger that had already risen up could no longer be suppressed. The servant who had walked into the living room was forced back to the kitchen by the powerful aura, and saw Mr. Jiu sitting on the sofa with a gloomy face like the sky before a storm. The servants didn't know what had happened, but they knew that Mr. Jiu rarely got angry at home. This was the first time they saw him so angry, so they thought something big must have happened. The land bidding meeting ended in a bad mood last time, so we can only choose a time to renegotiate it again. When Shenyang received the meeting information from Song Yun, there were only 3 days left before the land bidding. After going out, Shenyang took a taxi to the location sent by Song Yun. Gajiao is the name of a coffee shop. Its decoration style is European and American, high-end and very consistent with the name Gajiao. Of course, those who can consume here are all upper-class people, such as Song Yun. Once inside, the waiter came to greet us. She gave Song Yun's name, and the waiter took her to a private room with a golden VIP logo on the door. People are divided into different classes. The rich and the poor are divided into one group, and the rich can be further divided into different classes. If her family background is placed among the poor, she would be considered wealthy, but if she is placed among the rich, she would not be considered decent. Why? As human beings, Shenyang works harder and is more capable than any of them, so she deserves better. After adjusting her mood, Shenyang pushed the door and walked in. When Song Yun heard the noise, she looked up and met Shenyang's gaze. She looked away in a flash and put down the coffee cup. She was graceful and upright, with every move being measured, and her whole body exuded the meaning of good manners and discipline. Shenyang sat down opposite and the waiter brought her a cup of coffee. She took a look and saw that it was Civet Catfice's coffee, which cost $160 per pound, which is equivalent to more than 1,000 yuan. Luxury. Shenyang mixed the coffee, maintaining a lazy and casual attitude. It seems that there is nothing good to talk about between the two of us, right? Song Yun is no simple person. She is a 1,000-year-old fox that has transformed into a human. You have to be very careful when dealing with her. Song Yun smiled, her tone somewhat indifferent. Miss Shen, do you really think there is nothing to discuss between us? Shenyang held the spoon and stirred the coffee regularly. Is there anything in common between us? Song Yun leaned back and squinted at Shenyang. Jiu Tinghan. The spoon paused and Shenyang pinched the handle. If there was anything that made her feel unhappy when she came back this time, it was Jiu Tinghan's attitude towards her. The second was the woman next to Jiu Tinghan. She thought that person was just a nobody, but she didn't expect that she would be the daughter of the Song group. Thinking of this, Shenyang finally understood why Song Yun was looking for her. She loosened her fingers and the spoon fell into the cup. She leaned back and looked at Song Yun. Let's get straight to the point. What do you want to do? Or in other words, what do you want me to do? I want you to be the CEO of Song Group. Song Yun said calmly, as if this important matter was as simple as drinking coffee. Shenyang was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. She clutched her bag tightly under the table and stammered for a long time, why me? Chapter 9 Your ambition does not allow for mediocrity. Song Yun glanced at Shenyang without saying anything, picked up the coffee and took a sip, just like a falconer training a hawk. When Shenyang's eyes began to wander and she didn't know where to put her hands and feet, she put down the coffee cup and said slowly, because you and Jiu Tinghan were once lovers. Shenyang's heart tightened. Having a lover was good, but this was her most precious thing, and she didn't like anyone using it to scheme against her. Why do you think I will agree? Shenyang's tone turned cold. The position of CEO of Song Group was really a fatal temptation to her. But she still wanted to protect the last bit of innocence in her heart, and protect those simple memories and emotions with Jiu Tinghan. Do you have any other choice? Falcon trainers are not afraid of the eagle's resistance and shouting, because they have enough patience to wait for the eagles to be tamed. In fact, the same is true for people. The competition between people is about who has more patience. Whoever can wear down the other party's last bit of bottom line will win. Song Yun was undoubtedly a veteran among Falcon trainers, and she broke down Shenyang's psychological defenses with just one sentence. Ms. Shen, don't underestimate your ambition. If you want to release it, you need opportunities and a stage, and only I can give you these two things. Shenyang compromised and agreed. She wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jiyu Tinghan. She would let Jiyu Tinghan and everyone else know that she, Shenyang, was the most capable one. She was the only one who was the best match for Jiyu Tinghan. When Song Chuchu heard that Shenyang was appointed CEO and would go to Goose to discuss a contract, jealousy and envy made her temper explode instantly, and she stormed into Song Yun's office angrily. Song Yun was discussing the contract with Shenyang and the things to pay attention to when going to Goose. When she saw Song Chuchu barging in like a poodle with its hair blown up, her face turned cold and she said in a sharp tone, "What are you doing? Can't you knock on the door?" Song Chuchu was most afraid of Song Yun's cold face, so she reluctantly walked out of the door, knocked on the door again, snorted coldly at Shenyang, raised her chin and looked at Song Yun. "Mom, I want to go to Goose too." Song Yun rubbed her forehead. She wanted to go to Goo's company just for Jiyu Tinghan. Although she also wanted Chuchu to get close to Jiyu Tinghan, after all, outsiders were not as reliable as her own daughter. But, is Jiyu Tinghan a good person? She doesn't want to see Chuchu get hurt. Shenyang is going to discuss business. What are you going for? Go back. No. When Song Chuchu heard this, she instantly felt aggrieved. She threw her bag on the sofa and curled up on the sofa, looking spoiled and arrogant. I can also go to discuss business. My ability is no worse than someone else's. Why can she go but I can't? Mom, I am your biological daughter. Why would you rather trust an outsider than me? Song Yun was troubled by Song Chuchu. She knew Song Chuchu's temper too well. She was like a donkey and could be fatal when she got stubborn. Let the young lady go. Shenyang said, having the young lady present can also represent the sincerity of our company. Song Yun looked at Shenyang, who was calm and steady, and handled things properly. This is the second reason why she chose her as CEO. Okay. Song Yun agreed, looked at Song Chuchu and warned, when you get to Goose, watch more and talk less. If I find out what trouble you've made, don't blame my own mother for turning her back on you. Song Chuchu was very dissatisfied. She ignored Song Yun's warning and didn't take it seriously at all. Her mind was full of Jiyu Tinghan. Shenyang saw through Song Chuchu's thoughts and did not expose them. Jiyu Tinghan could be called a true emperor's favored son, and it was common for an innocent little girl to be infatuated with him. As for Song Chuchu, she really didn't take her seriously, and she was also certain that Jiyu Tinghan would never even look at Song Chuchu. She knew Jiyu Tinghan's taste best. The car stopped in front of the Jiyu group. Shenyang got out of the car and looked up at the tall building of Jiyu's company. The sunlight reflected off the glass, making her dizzy, but she forced herself not to close her eyes. She had to remember the height of this tall building. This was the distance between her and Jiyu Tinghan. She would step on the broken glass step by step, walk to his side, and become his only one. Asshole. Open your dog eyes and see clearly. I am the daughter of the Song group. How dare you stop me? Song Chuchu's sharp voice interrupted Shenyang's thoughts. After she lowered her head and her dizziness disappeared, she saw Song Chuchu and the security guard carrying the man. No matter how exquisite her makeup is or how expensive her clothes are, she can't hide the shrewish aura emanating from her bones. In such a situation, Shenyang really wanted to just leave and didn't want to become the same person as Song Chuchu. However, the facts did not allow her to make her own choice, so she had to bite the bullet and walk over and show her work badge. Hello, we are representatives of the Song group. We are here to meet with Mr. Jiyu today and hope to be flexible. The security guard was having a headache because of Song Chuchu's noise. He felt better after seeing Shenyang's friendly expression. He glanced at his work badge and said, "Wait a moment." Then he picked up the intercom to contact. After receiving the instructions, the security guard looked at the two of them and said indifferently, "I'm sorry, there is no appointment with the Song group today. Please go back." Song Chuchu turned around and glared at Shenyang. How do you do things? Don't you make an appointment in advance? Are you happy now that you've been turned down? Shenyang frowned. Even though she was angry, she could only hold it in. I'm sorry. It's my mistake. Then he looked at the security guard and said, "Can you make an exception and let us make an appointment now?" The security guard felt that Shenyang was quite pitiful. Judging from her work ID, she was a CEO, but she was actually scolded by a little girl. "I'm sorry, today's appointments are full, and I don't take appointments here. Please go back and make an appointment with the secretary department." The security guard's meaning was very clear: you can't enter if you don't have an appointment. Song Chuchu got angry all of a sudden, and threw her bag at the security guard. "No one has ever dared to stop me since I was a child, but today I have to go in." Choo-choo. Shenyang didn't care about the embarrassment and hurried to pull her away. If she let Song Chuchu continue to make a fuss, it would only be more embarrassing. TSK, Miss Song is really well educated. The clear voice was full of ridicule and sarcasm, causing Shenyang and Song Chuchu to look over. Song Tao was wearing a beige wavy pleated long skirt, and the smile on her face was extremely elegant. She raised her eyebrows slightly. "I thought I came to the wrong place. After a closer look, this is indeed a company, not a vegetable market." Chapter 10. She is my wife. Song Chuchu was furious. She was already unhappy about being turned away, and now she was being mocked by her arch-enemy. She immediately strode up to Song Tao. "What about you? Do you have an appointment? Don't think that you are a rich lady just because you wear a few brand-name clothes. There is no place for you in the Song family now." The Song family is undoubtedly the bottom line in Song Tao's heart. After Song Chuchu said this, Song Tao's face immediately darkened, and the curve of the corners of his mouth disappeared. The Song family was clearly the result of her parents' hard work, which consumed their entire lives' time and energy. Yet, it had fallen into the hands of thieves, who were still trying to show off in front of her. How ridiculous! Song Tao looked at Song Chuchu coldly. Song Yun was a smart man, but the woman he gave birth to had no brains at all. "Song Chuchu, don't forget who founded the Song Corporation. You and your mother are just housekeepers hired by my family." "What? You have been managing the Song Corporation for so long that you have forgotten who their master is." With a faint smile on her lips, she slowly walked towards Song Chuchu. The powerful aura emanating from him made Song Chuchu unable to utter a word, and she could only stare blankly at Song Tao. Song Tao patted Song Chuchu's shoulder and looked down at the clothes she was wearing. "My parents are the founders of the Song family. I am the legitimate heir. Who are you?" After saying that, she walked around Song Chuchu and went to the security guard. "I want to see Jiu Tinghan." The security guard was so shocked by Song Tao's words that he didn't recover for a while. It was not until now that he reacted. "Miss, do you have an appointment?" "Reserve." Song Tao frowned slightly. Since the day she married Jiu Tinghan, she had been in and out of Gu's company only a few times, and had no idea about making appointments. The reason why she came to Gu's to find Jiu Tinghan today was simply because she was in a hurry to get a divorce. "Although I have signed a divorce agreement with Jiu Tinghan, it will not count until I get the divorce certificate." If she didn't come over to urge him, with Jiu Tinghan's fickle personality, it would take who knows how long. The security guard nodded and looked at Song Tao suspiciously. "Miss, do you have an appointment?" "You can't enter without an appointment." Song Tao shook her head. "No." The onlookers, including Song Chuchu, all showed contempt. Seeing how arrogant she was just now, they thought she was very powerful. Song Chuchu felt very happy and walked to Song Tao with a smile on her face. The look of a villain who has succeeded was fully revealed in her. "I thought you were so great, Miss Song Tao Song. You were just teasing me. Don't you have an appointment yourself?" The big show between Song Tao and Song Chuchu just now attracted the attention of many people. Now seeing that their pretentious Song Tao was also rejected, they couldn't help but start to laugh at him. "I saw her acting so high and mighty just now, and I really thought she was a tough character, but I didn't expect she was just pretending." Sigh. "So, you still have to be down to earth in life." TSK, it was really a good show today. I guess she will go back in disgrace soon. She is such a clown. The laughter of the crowd came one after another, but it sounded like the sound of wind in Song Tao's ears and had no effect at all. She has seen enough of the fickleness of the world to become accustomed to this kind of situation. If you stand high enough, you must be able to withstand the cold. When Song Chuchu saw Song Tao remain silent, she thought she was embarrassed and couldn't say a word, and she felt even happier. "Didn't you just say that you are the legitimate heir?" Then please enter Mr. Gu's office. But judging from the current situation, you and your parents are both pitiful. She said a lot of things with great complacency, as if she was proud of being a thief. Song Tao's eyes were cold. Song Chuchu had violated her bottom line again and again, and there was no need for her to endure it anymore. Song Chuchu was frightened by her stare, feeling extremely guilty, and her aura instantly weakened. What's the point of glaring at me? You don't have the ability to get into Gu's, and you want to blame me. At this moment, a deep and hoarse male voice was suddenly heard. The tone was light but full of oppression, making people involuntarily bow down. Who said she can't join Gu's? As soon as Jiyu Tinghan received the message from his assistant, he immediately went downstairs to the lobby. Unexpectedly, he heard Song Chuchu's words as soon as he got out of the elevator. He had been in a bad mood recently, and Song Chuchu was adding fuel to the fire. Song Chuchu stared blankly at this godlike man. She was stunned for a moment. When she came to her senses, she explained in a panic. Mr. Jiyu, please don't misunderstand. Song Tao clearly didn't have an appointment, but she insisted on barging in. This seriously disrupted the daily work order of Gu's company. I couldn't stand it, so I said a few words. What a complete distortion of the truth. Song Tao looked at Song Chuchu expressionlessly as she threw dirty water on her, and remained calm after she finished speaking. She should thank Song Chuchu for making such a big fuss and inviting Jiyu Tinghan out. Jiyu Tinghan nodded slightly. You do need to make an appointment to enter Gu's. Song Chuchu thought that Jiyu Tinghan was affirming her behavior, and immediately smiled. Yes, but Song Tao doesn't know the rules very well and hasn't seen the world, so this is the case. Jiyu Tinghan has been in the business world for many years, and none of the tricks of those old foxes could fool him, let alone Song Chuchu's mediocre skills. He glanced at Song Chuchu calmly. But I don't need an appointment to enter Gu's, so why does Dao Dao need one to enter Gu's? Peach. Everyone looked at each other, wondering why Jiyu Tinghan called Song Tao so intimately. Even Song Tao couldn't help but look at Jiyu Tinghan. What tricks was he playing? The security guard who had just stopped Song Tao wiped the sweat from his forehead. The situation changed so quickly that he was caught off guard. He asked, Boss Jiyu, what do you mean by this? Dao Dao is my wife, and Gu's is also hers. It's ridiculous that the master needs to make an appointment to enter his own industry. This sentence completely caused an uproar in the crowd, and everyone's eyes widened. If Jiyu Tinghan hadn't said this himself, no one else would have believed it. Among them, Shenyang's expression was the most interesting. She stared at Jiyu Tinghan intently. The extremely precious feelings that she had kept secretly in her heart turned into ashes. Song Chuchu didn't notice Shenyang's abnormality, and left in shame while everyone was still shocked by the news. When Shenyang saw Song Chuchu leaving, she knew that if she stayed here she would only become a laughing stock, but she still couldn't believe that Jiyu Tinghan would do this to her. I don't admit it. Song Tao maintained her emotions, turned her head to look at Jiyu Tinghan, and spoke word by word. Chapter 11, Wedding Announcement. Jiyu Tinghan was not angry. He guessed that Song Tao would deny it. Dao Dao, lying is not a good thing. Everyone is here, so why not tell the truth? Song Tao and I have been married for 5 years. But she is a low-key person and doesn't like to be in the spotlight, so we chose to have a secret marriage. Married for 5 years, secret marriage. Every word was like a sharp dagger stabbing into Shenyang's heart. Her calm mask was mercilessly torn apart, exposing her fragile and humble heart. Is she the only one guarding this relationship? Why did Jiyu Tinghan treat her like this? Jiyu Tinghan's eyes were on Song Tao from beginning to end. He did not notice anything unusual about Shenyang, and he was not interested in finding out. He continued, I am not making it public for any other reason. I just want Song Tao to get the respect she deserves as my wife and as herself. Song Tao curled her lips slightly, and a warm current flowed through her heart. Ever since her parents left her, she hasn't felt the feeling of being unconditionally protected for a long time. She has been strong and cold for a long time, and she can handle almost everything with ease. But she also hopes that someone can stand by her side, help and understand her. Thanks. Song Tao walked up to Jiyu Tinghan and spoke softly. Her heart was somewhat moved, and for the first time she expressed her gratitude to Jiyu Tinghan from the bottom of her heart. In the 5 years of marriage, Song Tao had never thought about devoting herself to each other, and only regarded this marriage as a show. Her communication with Jiyu Tinghan was limited to politeness, but this time she was sincere. Ji Tinghan didn't expect Song Tao to soften her attitude. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Aren't you looking for me? Let's talk in my office. Good. Everyone saw Ji Tinghan and Song Tao walking in side by side, and the crowd slowly dispersed, but Xinyang still stood there for a long time, unable to come back to her senses, with all kinds of sour and painful emotions flooding her heart. She held back the tears in her eyes and turned away. GU Corporation is a business giant. As the executive president of GU Corporation, Ji Tinghan holds a high position of power. In addition, his outstanding appearance and temperament make him popular among thousands of women. Now that they have been married for 5 years, it has undoubtedly made headlines. The president of GU Corporation has been secretly married to his lovely wife for 5 years. He announced the marriage news to protect his wife. Ji Tinghan is already married. He announced the marriage in public in the GU family hall. Song Tao didn't expect that she had just visited Gu's company yesterday and would come again today. As soon as she walked into the hall, she attracted everyone's attention. Many people were whispering in the corner. Although Song Tao was no longer surprised by this, she still felt a little embarrassed. Hello, I want to see Ji Tinghan, please help me. Before Song Tao finished speaking, the receptionist smiled and said, Miss Song, I will arrange for someone to take you to Mr. Gu's office. Okay, thanks. Office. After Song Tao got on the elevator, the receptionist immediately called Ji Tinghan, so Ji Tinghan was not surprised to see Song Tao standing in front of him. He felt inexplicably happy in his heart, but his face was calm. What's wrong? When Song Tao woke up, her cell phone was flooded with news reports. In the past, she would have just glanced at it and closed it. But now that she has become the protagonist, how can Song Tao remain calm? You've seen all the news reports, right? Our wedding news has become a big deal. Aren't you going to deal with it? Compared to Song Tao's impatience, Ji Tinghan seemed extremely calm. He frowned slightly, seemed to think for a moment, and replied, Don't you like this? Song Tao was stunned for a moment, and for a moment she didn't understand what Ji Tinghan meant. What do you mean? Ji Tinghan immediately restrained his expression. Nothing, I just thought that revealing your identity would be helpful to you. In short, we have already signed the divorce agreement, and news like this is really unnecessary at this time. After Song Tao said this, she left, and Ji Tinghan immediately turned on the computer. Ji Tinghan was wearing gold-rimmed glasses. As he moved the mouse, the news kept refreshing. He looked at the major headlines on the website and saw that he was the protagonist. He remained extremely calm and finally closed the website. Seeing that Ji Tinghan looked uncertain, the assistant couldn't figure out what he was thinking, so he asked tentatively, Boss Ji, do we need to ask the PR department to handle this news? Unexpectedly, Ji Tinghan chuckled and asked, Why do you want to get rid of it? Please ask the PR department to contact the reporters to publish more relevant reports, and then spend money on promotion. The more people know about it, the better. The assistant looked up at Ji Tinghan in surprise, and saw that he had already turned off the computer and opened the folder on the desk, so he didn't ask any more questions. Okay, I'll notify the PR department right away. Song Chuchu thought that the blow she suffered at GU's company yesterday was enough. I didn't expect that no matter where I went today, I would always see the keywords Ji Tinghan and 5 years of marriage. They were on the TV and mobile phone news at home, and were also being played on the big screen in the mall. She returned home with a rage and saw Song Yun sitting on the sofa. She immediately ran over and sat down beside her. Mom, you've seen the news. Song Tao has been with Mr. Ji for so long, and now the news is all over the place, and Mr. Ji didn't even stop it. Song Chuchu is a fool, but that doesn't mean Song Yun is also stupid. She was smart enough to hold on to her current position. She sneered, looking at the situation. Mr. Ji is very happy to see it. In the past, some internet celebrities wanted to use Ji Tinghan to hype themselves up. Less than an hour after the gossip came out, GU's statement came out. Several hours had passed, and the news had increased instead of decreased, proving that Ji Tinghan was not disgusted. But the Ji family is so powerful, and Song Tao has even hooked up with Mr. Ji. Aren't we at the mercy of others? Song Yun was also very shocked when she first learned that Song Tao was marrying Ji Tinghan, but then she thought again, she and Song Tao are related by blood, and with this relationship, the Ji family will definitely help her. With the big tree of Ji paving the way for her, would she still worry about future glory and wealth? What are you afraid of? Even if Song Tao sees us as a thorn in her side, we are still related to her by blood. As long as the GU family recognizes us as their relatives, that will be enough. Song Chuchu couldn't understand Song Yun's thoughts, so she could only nod blankly. What should we do now? Song Yun curled her lips into a smile, then elegantly poured herself a cup of tea and sipped it. She looked at the expensive and beautiful tea sets and fell into deep thought. She replied, Chuchu, you see how luxurious our family is. There is a reason why we can get to where we are today. If we don't use some tricks, we will have to live a poor life. It is easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but it is difficult to go from extravagance to frug. She put down the teacup in her hand and said, contact the GU family and pick a good day to have dinner at the restaurant. Chapter 12, Erase the Traces. Human desires are always endless, and Song Yun is no longer content with her current status. Song Chuchu was very envious. GU Tinghan was well known for his family background, status and character. He was the Prince Charming in the eyes of the rich girls of the upper class. But he chose Song Tao. But we have done so many things before. If the GU family finds out, won't we be doomed? What are you afraid of? It is inevitable that the GU family will investigate us, but as long as we wipe out the past events completely, they will have nowhere to find out. After saying that, Song Yun took out her cell phone from her bag and dialed her assistant's number. Find me a high-end hotel for the night 3 days from now. 3 days were enough time for her to erase everything and make what had happened completely disappear from this world. As long as Song Tao does not have sufficient evidence to prove that she did those things, then what Song Tao said was just a misunderstanding and she was just confused by those rumors. Compared to the Song family, which is wrapped in desire and greed, the GU family mansion seems extremely lively and festive. Mr. GU was watching the news on his mobile phone and his laughter never stopped. Har har. I was worried that Tinghan would treat Dao Dao badly, but I didn't expect him to be so responsible at the critical moment. Mr. GU has worked in the business world all his life, but as he gets older he doesn't have much desire for money and power. He hopes to see his children and grandchildren living together and that the next generation will live in harmony and happiness. The nanny at the side also laughed. I heard about it too. It seems that it happened in the lobby of Gu's company. Miss Song was bullied by someone. When Mr. GU found out, he immediately went downstairs to protect Miss Song. Okay. I can finally rest assured now. Mr. GU was happily watching the news when Song Yun called. Hello, are you Mr. GU? I am Song Tao's aunt, Song Yun. Whenever Grandpa GU heard the name Song Tao, he couldn't help but feel happy. He could even imagine what he would look like when he held his grandson in his arms. Yes. I called you today just to invite you out for dinner. Dao Dao didn't tell me she got married for so many years. Besides, Tao Tao's parents have passed away, and she doesn't have many relatives around her. So, I took the initiative to call you in-laws. After all, marriage is a big deal. I want to meet you and learn about the details. Old Master GU had long noticed that Song Tao rarely mentioned family matters, and now after hearing what Song Yun said, it made sense. Good. After hanging up the phone, Mr. GU pondered for a long time. Although he is already in his 60s, he is not old and confused. He turned to the housekeeper beside him and said, go check Song Yun's background and see if there is any conflict between her and Dao Dao. Yes. Because of the announcement of her marriage to GU Tinghan, Song Tao tossed and turned all night and couldn't sleep well. I woke up the next day and quickly packed up. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Song Yun looking at me with a smile. Song Tao's expression changed immediately, and the normal aura around him instantly emanated from her. Her eyes also became sharp. Why are you here? Facing a villain like Song Yun, there was really no need for her to have a good face. Song Yun saw that Song Tao showed her sharp edge as soon as she saw her, but she was not angry. She raised her eyebrows and smiled gently, and said in a very friendly way, Dao Dao, why didn't you tell me, your aunt, that you got married? Song Tao didn't buy into her advances and answered decisively, why should I tell you? Dao Dao, I advise you not to be so stubborn. Marrying into a wealthy family sounds like a very happy thing, but if you don't have the help of your family, you will be looked down upon. Song Tao instantly guessed Song Yun's intention. Was she setting her sights on the GU family? Song Yun, are you crazy? How did you treat me in the past? And how did you treat the Song family? You were hunted down, spread rumors, and threatened. Are you amnesiac now? Sometimes Song Tao admired Song Yun, who could ignore everything for the sake of wealth and fame, and accept everything that did not belong to her with a clear conscience. Song Yun had already guessed that Song Tao would say this, and her smile became even wider, as if she was proud of the wise decision she had made. Dao Dao, you have to know that some things can happen, and they can also disappear from this world. As long as no one knows about it, it means that it never existed. Song Dao's face darkened. Just as she thought, Song Yun must have erased all traces of the past. Song Yun, I really overestimated your moral standards. Song Yun doesn't care about these things. What she cares about is the huge benefits that GU brings to her. As long as the meeting with Mr. GU goes smoothly, her wealth and glory for the rest of her life will be a foregone conclusion. Dao Dao, don't say that. 2 days later, in the private room 302 of the Hualong Hotel, at 8 p.m. Song Tao chuckled. It seemed that Song Yun had made all the preparations and was just waiting for her to jump. Are you so sure I'll go? I've already contacted Mr. GU, and I'm sure he'll call you soon. He's old, and he wants to see his children and grandchildren happy, and you don't want to disappoint him. After saying all this, Song Yun turned around and left, got into a luxury car parked not far away and drove away. Not long after Song Yun left, Mr. GU called. Dao Dao, your aunt called me yesterday and said she wanted to meet me. I'm old and I like the crowds. If you're free, come along. Chapter 13. The higher you fly, the harder you fall. Song Dao's eyes were sharp. Since Song Yun was so confident that the GU family was in her pocket, she couldn't let Song Yun down. After all, the higher you fly, the harder you fall. Her hand reached too far, and when she saw a delicious piece of cake, she couldn't help but want to take it for herself, but she never thought carefully about whether she could swallow the cake. Okay, I'll go. After hanging up the phone, Song Tao was surprisingly calm. She had known for a long time that Song Yun was not easy to deal with, but she would never give in easily. Hualong Hotel. Song Yun and Song Chuchu made full preparations for this dinner. They spent a lot of money on brand-name clothes and bags, put on exquisite and flawless makeup, and looked glamorous. Doing this is to support yourself and make yourself confident enough to be on an equal footing with the GU family. Before Song Chuchu came, she was taught to be a low-key lady and to follow etiquette in every move. She looked like she had been taught good etiquette since childhood. But she was used to being unrestrained on weekdays, and she was very uncomfortable with this suddenly. To show their sincerity, Song Yun and Song Chuchu arrived half an hour early. It didn't take long for Song Chuchu's patience to wear out. She asked in a low voice, Mom, do you think Song Tao will come? Song Yun was full of confidence. She curled her lips and replied, I can't invite her. Does that mean Mr. GU can't invite her either? Now she has had everyone erase everything that had happened, and she is not afraid of confronting Song Tao at all. As long as she appears innocent and confident enough, Song Tao can never be blamed for what she says. After a while, Mr. GU arrived. Compared to Song Yun and Song Chuchu who were dressed up, the old man looked very plain and simple. After a few polite words, the few people sat down. Song Yun looked worried, sighed several times, and said worriedly, I don't know if Dao Dao will come. Mr. GU had something in mind and replied, You are her aunt and she is my granddaughter-in-law. Why wouldn't she come? Mr. GU, you don't know. Although I watched Dao Dao grow up, I treated her with sincerity. But things happen unexpectedly. Later, her parents got into trouble, and then everything changed. Before coming, Mr. GU had already investigated the past events thoroughly, and he knew everything that had happened. But he showed no emotion and pretended to know nothing. What happened afterwards? I noticed that Dao Dao was always a very well-behaved child. Something happened to Tao Tao's parents, and the Song family was leaderless. Dao Dao was still young at the time, so I took over the management of the company. Who knew that Dao Dao would get into a car accident and disappear for 5 years? When she came back, she didn't recognize me as her aunt. When she said this, Song Yun's eyes turned red and her voice became choked up, perfectly portraying the look of a heartbroken elder. I don't blame her. After all, she's been through so much, so it's not a bad thing that she's very vigilant. But I'm her aunt. How can I not be heartbroken to see that she's suspicious of me? Old Master GU nodded thoughtfully. Seeing Song Yun so sad, he said, Mrs. Song, there's no need to be so sad. If there really is a misunderstanding between you two, you can just communicate more. Hearing what Mr. Gu said, Songyun felt relieved. Her goal was achieved. She sobbed softly and replied, "Thank you, Mr. Gu. I'm so sorry. It's such a good day for a dinner party, but I'm crying. I really lost my composure." Seeing this, Song Chuchu at the side quickly took a tissue to help Songyun wipe her tears and comforted her. "Mom, don't be sad. We used to have such a good relationship. We can definitely go back to the way it was before. I also believe that Sister Dao Dao is not so unreasonable." Before Song Dao even arrived, an image of someone who was emotionally sensitive and unable to distinguish between good and evil had already been established. Songyun became an elder who had no words to express her grievances and endured everything silently. As time went on, more and more people came into their hall. Songyun chatted calmly with the ladies present, and at the same time introduced them to Mr. Jiyu, who was sitting next to them, which made the ladies extremely envious. Songyun smiled as she saw the lady off, then returned to her seat, feeling extremely happy. Although she had already taken the position of executive president of the Song Corporation, those ladies of noble birth always looked down on her. Now that she has the Jiyu family support, they will all try to please her in the future. When Song Dao arrived, he saw their hall was filled with people toasting each other and everyone was dressed in gorgeous and dazzling clothes. They were chatting and laughing about the latest gossip in the upper class society, and when they saw the protagonist of the party coming, they all turned their eyes to her. She walked to where Songyun and old man Jiyu were with an expressionless face, and glanced coldly at Songyun, who looked like a smug person. Only after he sat next to Mr. Jiyu did he smile. "Grandpa, why are you here so early?" When Mr. Jiyu saw her coming, he patted her hands cheerfully and said, "For something this important, you should come early." Seeing this, Songyun quickly responded, "Yes, I also invited Mr. Jiyu on such an important day, but I don't know if he will come." Jiyu Tinghan was also invited. Song Dao immediately understood what Songyun meant. If he comes, Songyun can still get close to him. If he doesn't come, he can use this as an opportunity to mock him. Either way, Songyun will not lose money. She pretended not to hear what Songyun said and continued chatting with old man Jiyu. Songyun had no choice but to shut her mouth in embarrassment and talk to Song Chuchu beside her. "Look! Mr. Jiyu is here. I told you, Mr. Jiyu will definitely come. Mr. Jiyu never attended banquets before, but I didn't expect him to come today. It seems that only the Jiyu family banquet can allow him to show up. Don't you think about it? Today is a banquet hosted by Mr. Gu's wife's aunt. It's actually a meeting between the in-laws. If Mr. Jiyu values his wife, he will definitely come." Although Jiyu Tinghan didn't say anything and just opened the door quietly, it still caused a commotion among the crowd. He walked over to Song Dao with an expressionless face and sat down. "Sorry, I'm late. I have something to take care of at the company." Song Dao originally thought that Jiyu Tinghan was talking to old man Jiyu, but she found that his eyes were always on her. Then she reacted and smiled unnaturally. "It's okay, I just got here too." The interaction between the two people broke the hearts of many young ladies. It turned out that they still had illusions and believed that the two had a bad relationship, but now it seems that is probably not the case. Chapter 14, Mr. Jiyu, give it a try. Seeing this, Mr. Jiyu smiled even more, and said with a hearty laugh, "Now that everyone is here, let's get started." "Good." Songyun took the red wine handed to her by the waiter and poured a full glass with a smile. The bright red liquid shimmers in the red wine glass, with an indescribable beauty. "Dao Dao, I have not been able to take good care of you over the years. As your aunt, I feel very guilty and regretful. This glass of wine is for you." After saying that, he took a sip, poured another glass and handed it to Song Dao. Everyone's attention has been on this table. Song Dao's every move was magnified infinitely. She had no choice but to take the wine glass. She was about to drink it when a bony hand suddenly appeared in her sight. "You are not fit to drink, so let me do it." Jiyu Tinghan's voice is as deep as the red wine in a red wine glass, becoming even more charming after the precipitation of time. He glanced at Song Dao, took the wine glass without saying anything, looked at the stunned Songyun and said, "I'll drink for her." Seeing Jiyu Tinghan blocking the glass of wine, Songyun smiled awkwardly, but she didn't want to let Song Dao go just like that. So he poured another glass of white wine. "I almost forgot that Dao Dao doesn't like the taste of red wine. Why don't you try this wine?" Song Tao frowned slightly. Jiu Tinghan, who was standing beside her, noticed her little action, took the glass of wine, and drank it all in one gulp, causing cheers from everyone present. She doesn't like the taste of red wine, and she doesn't like the taste of white wine even more. If Mrs. Song wants to show her sincerity, I'll just drink it. Seeing that he kept blocking the wine for her, Song Tao felt mixed emotions. Seeing that the other ladies were praising Jiu Tinghan for his alcohol tolerance, she said, "Why didn't I know that you could drink so much before? Why don't we go back and have a drink? You have 3 cups and I have 1 cup." It sounded a bit unreasonable, but Jiu Tinghan nodded, okay. The strong liquor burned his throat, and the fishy and pungent taste remained in his throat, and Jiu Tinghan's voice became a little hoarse. Her heart couldn't help but beat faster, and she continued, "I can't get used to the wine here. I remember there was a bottle of tea in the wine cabinet at home. I want to drink that wine." This bottle of wine was obtained by Jiu Tinghan accidentally while he was on a business trip. The taste has become mellow with time and the smell alone is enough to make people obsessed. "If you like it, I'll ask my assistant to go home and get it." Song Tao pursed her lips and said nothing more. Both of them seemed very calm, but they made others excited and excited. Unexpectedly, Jiu Tinghan not only has a good family background and good looks, but also dotes on his wife without any scruples. The fire of jealousy in Song Chuchu's heart burned, and she glared at Song Tao with dissatisfaction. No one can just laugh it off when seeing the man they love indulging other women. Why can Song Tao get all this so easily? Song Yun saw everything, glanced at the extremely angry Song Chuchu, and said apologetically, "I'm going to the bathroom." So Song Yun and Song Chuchu walked to their hotel bathroom one after another. Song Yun glared at Song Chuchu in disappointment, hating her for losing her temper. "Look at the look in your eyes just now. Are you afraid that others don't know that you and Song Tao have a grudge against each other? I told you clearly before I came here, don't show your emotions on your face." Song Chuchu was both angry and anxious. If she continued to watch that scene, it would be more painful than letting her die. But Mr. Jiu dotes on Song Tao so much. What if Mr. Jiu makes things difficult for us because of Song Tao? Song Yun doesn't believe in loyalty. She smiled disdainfully. She had seen a lot of ups and downs. Wouldn't those so-called good men still be tempted when they saw other women? She took out a paper bag from her bag, handed it to Song Chuchu, and squinted her eyes. "Chuchu, you must take this thing carefully. Whether we can succeed this time depends on you." Song Yun and Song Chuchu returned to their seats with a smile on their faces, and they looked even more radiant after putting on makeup. "I'm so sorry for the delay." Song Tao glanced at Song Chuchu, who was sitting in her seat with a smile on her face. Her intuition told her that something must have happened just now, otherwise Song Chuchu's personality would not allow her to remain so calm. Her vigilance instantly rose and she clenched the wine glass in her hand. "Waiter, I remember that Hualong Hotel has a freshly made cocktail. I see that Mr. Jiu has a good alcohol tolerance, why don't you try it?" Jiu Tinghan didn't say anything, just taking it as his consent. Upon seeing this, Song Yun quickly handed the wine glass to Jiu Tinghan. The expectation and greed in her eyes could hardly be hidden, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. "Boss Jiu, would you like to try?" The color of the drink changes gradually from dark purple to psychedelic light purple, until it turns into the deepest purple, beautiful and seductive, hiding many unknown conspiracies. Jiu Tinghan raised his eyes and glanced at Song Yun, chuckled with an ambiguous meaning, and took the wine glass naturally, "Okay." As they drank the wine, Song Yun and Song Chuchu felt relieved. "I opened my phone, glanced at the time, and calculated silently in my mind." Song Tao witnessed the whole process. It seemed that there was nothing wrong with it, but there were also many indescribable weirdness. She turned her head and saw Jiu Tinghan had a strange look on his face, so she didn't say anything. After a long time, the dinner came to an end and the crowd had almost dispersed. Jiu Tinghan felt his body temperature gradually rising, and it felt like there was a fire burning in his chest, with an indescribable weirdness. He stood up and said, "Grandpa, the hall is a bit stuffy. I'm going to go out and get some fresh air." "Good." Mr. Jiu was in a very good mood today. He was chatting and laughing with Song Tao and didn't care about Jiu Tinghan's sudden departure. When Song Yun and Song Chuchu saw Jiu Tinghan leaving, they immediately followed Jiu Tinghan out of the hall quietly. "Dao, Tinghan is actually a very good kid, he just seems a little unkind. You have to get along well with him." Grandpa won't force you to do anything you don't want to do, as long as you are happy. They were originally talking about Song Tao's childhood, but who would have thought that they would bring up the marriage of Song Tao and Ji Tinghan? Mr. Ji patted his head and said, "Look at my head. I can't talk about this with just you. It's almost time, Dao, go call Tinghan over. I must tell him well. I will never let him bully you." Good. Song Tao stood up, walked out of the hall, and looked for Ji Tinghan in the direction he left. When I turned a corner, I finally saw Ji Tinghan's back. Just as she was about to walk over, she saw Song Yun and Song Chuchu hiding not far away. "Mom, it's almost time." Chapter 15 Mutual Benefit. In order to prevent others from discovering, Song Yun specially bought medicine with a long time span. The effect is good. Before the onset of the disease, people will only feel that they have drunk too much. Song Yun looked around and saw that there was no one around, so she nodded and said, "Go." At this time, Ji Tinghan's consciousness was gradually becoming blurred. If he hadn't been leaning against the wall in the corridor, he would have fallen to the ground, and the sound of high heels could be heard in his ears. He thought it was Song Tao who came to see him, but he smelled a pungent scent of perfume. "Mr. Ji, I'll help you go to your room to rest." Ji Tinghan didn't have the energy to think, and was supported by two people to the door of the room. Song Tao followed them all the way and guessed their intentions. She couldn't help but sigh that Song Yun could really do anything. She turned on her phone and dialed Baiju's number. "Come to 1302, Mr. Ji is in trouble." After saying that, Song Tao hung up the phone, walked behind Song Yun and Song Chuchu, and said in a light voice with a hint of mockery, "Thank you for your hard work in sending Mr. Ji to the room." She smiled lightly, without any exaggerated movements, but she had an indescribable sense of oppression. He glanced at the unconscious Ji Tinghan, then looked at the guilty Song Yun. "You are surprised that I am here, right? After all, you have been observing for so long and made sure that there is no one around to bring Mr. Ji here." Song Yun looked unhappy. She had thought that things would go smoothly and be completed smoothly. She never expected that she had missed Song Tao. She turned her head and signaled Song Chuchu with her eyes to take action. Song Chuchu had long been fed up with Song Tao, and walked up to Song Tao with her chin raised proudly. She reached out to grab Song Tao's wrist, and said threateningly, "Song Tao, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." "Really?" Song Tao directly grabbed the hand that Song Chuchu extended to her, and easily held her arm back, making her unable to move. The series of actions only takes a few seconds. "You?" Song Chuchu looked at Song Tao in disbelief and tried to struggle with all her strength. Song Tao frowned, loosened her hand, and pushed her against the wall. At this time, Baizhuo rushed here in a panic. Seeing that Song Yun was still holding Ji Tinghan, he understood the situation and successfully kidnapped Song Yun and Song Chuchu. After the three people left, Song Tao walked to Ji Tinghan. "Ji Tinghan, you should thank me. If it weren't for me, those two people would have caught you." Ji Tinghan had no support and could only lean against the cold wall. Fortunately, the low temperature gave him a chance to wake up. His consciousness returned a little, but then the effect of the drug became even stronger. His forehead was covered with sweat, and his whole body felt like it was in a furnace. He kept panting and said in a low voice, "They tricked me." Song Tao just looked at Ji Tinghan silently. Seeing Ji Tinghan's reaction, she guessed what the medicine was. "However, he and I have already signed a divorce agreement. The two of them have nothing to do with each other anymore, so there is no need for her to save him." "Really? But this has nothing to do with me." Ji Tinghan was desperate. He knew that Song Tao would not help him on her own initiative, so he had to make some conditions. "I won't take advantage of you for nothing. Haven't you always wanted to take back the Song Corporation? As long as you help me this time, I can let you take back the management rights of the Song Corporation." This is undoubtedly a huge temptation for Song Tao. She knew it would be difficult to do it alone. But with Ji Tinghan's help, it would be a piece of cake. But while Song Tao was still hesitating, Ji Tinghan's reason had been overwhelmed by desire. He stood up, rushed to Song Tao, held her head and kissed her. "You?" Song Tao widened her eyes, wanting to refuse but unable to. The sudden soft feeling made her face flush. Ji Tinghan's hot chest and pounding heartbeat were so clear that everything seemed like a movie. Ji Tinghan's desire seemed to have found a switch and poured out at this moment. He stroked Song Dao's hair tenderly, focusing all his attention on her. The two of them walked all their way into the room. As the door closed, Song Dao's heart became completely confused and she followed Ji Yu Tinghan's rhythm. Song Yun and Song Chuchu were sent to some remote suburb by Baizhua. The two of them were thrown to the ground by Baizhua like goods, and Song Chuchu grimaced in pain. Song Chuchu saw that her arm had been scratched and had a bloody mark. How could she, who had always been delicate, endure such pain? She crawled to her feet in anger. You really don't know what's good for you? Do you know who you offended? Baizhua glanced at him coldly and sneered disdainfully. In his opinion, talking to a stupid person like Song Chuchu was tantamount to lowering one's own status. He looked at Song Chuchu with sympathy. I should be the one saying this. After saying that, he stepped on the accelerator and drove away. Song Chuchu and Song Yun were left alone standing in the empty field, shivering in the cold wind. How could Song Chuchu, who had been pampered since childhood, tolerate such an environment? She walked back to Song Yun angrily and complained, Mom, there is not even a car here. If I had known, I would not have attacked Ji Yu Tinghan today. It's really not worth it. Song Yun glared at Song Chuchu and knocked on her hand without hesitation. How could I give birth to a daughter like you? If Song Tao hadn't come to ruin the plan today, we would have succeeded. This sentence seemed to wake up Song Chuchu, and her eyes lit up instantly. Yes. It's all Song Tao's fault. If she hadn't suddenly appeared, Mr. Ji Yu would have been my man. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She wished she could tear Song Tao apart with her bare hands. Mom, I can't bear to let Song Tao take advantage of me like this. We must take revenge on her. Compared to Song Chuchu, who was always angry but had no idea what to do, Song Yun seemed much smarter. She sneered, and as she looked at the barren land, the shame and anger in her heart grew stronger. So many people wanted to please her, but now she was thrown here. Revenge? Of course I have to take revenge on her. I have discovered that Song Tao is a disaster. People like her shouldn't exist in this world. She narrowed her eyes. Song Tao's existence was like a time bomb. If she suddenly turned against him one day, she might really be dragged down by Song Tao. So, just cut the weeds and eradicate them at their roots. The second day. After returning from Hualong Hotel, Song Tao has been feeling inexplicably uneasy and shy. She feels like she has no idea where to start when she sits at her computer desk and wants to work. The scene of last night lingered in her mind, making her blush and her heart beat fast. Just at this moment, the doorbell rang. Song Tao opened the door and saw Baizhua. Chapter 16. Don't forget your situation. Baizhua saw that her face was still a little red and thought she had a fever, so he asked with concern, Your face is a little red, are you okay? Song Tao and Ji Yu Tinghan have been married for 5 years, and they have done these things before. But this time she couldn't help but be moved and think about it. She didn't know what this strange feeling was. She pretended to be calm, turned around naturally, poured a glass of water, and sat on the sofa. The weather has been a bit cold recently, and I have been covered in the quilt for a long time. Baizhua didn't think much about it. He came here for something more important this time. He sat opposite Song Tao, his face extremely serious, and said, Someone wants to spend 100 million to buy Ji Yu Tinghan's scandal. Song Tao almost lost control of the cup. Her brows twitched slightly, she pursed her lips, and then took another sip of water. She used to make decisive decisions, but now she was a little hesitant. Ji Yu Tinghan and I have been married for so many years, so it's not a good idea to do this. To say this is to refuse. Baizhua frowned. He didn't know what Song Tao's real thoughts were behind what she said. But this is not the time for Song Tao to talk about friendship. This is an organizational requirement. Song Tao-sun had nothing to say. There were not many rules in the dark web, but each one was a dead rule. One of them is that the task must be completed, the process is not important, the result is the most fundamental. She held the water cup nervously, lowered her eyes, and felt guilty and embarrassed for the first time. She was silent for a long time before she replied, I know. Baizhua had been with Song Tao for such a long time, and seeing her abnormal mood, half of it was because of her friendship and half because of her secret admirer, he reminded her. Song Tao, you must not forget our current situation. We absolutely cannot have feelings for some people. Don't worry, I know. Song Tao drank the remaining water in the cup and sighed. Ji Yu Tinghan, I am sorry for you this time. She was in the dark web, and since the organization had given her the mission, she had no choice. Song Tao's mood inexplicably began to get irritated. She rubbed her slightly messy hair, her tone became nonchalant, and she stood up. "I'll send the stuff to you, just pass it on to the organization. You go back first, I want to continue sleeping." Baizhua wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in his throat and he pursed his lips. Seeing that Song Tao had gone upstairs and closed the door, he left without saying anything. In the room, Song Tao sorted out everything related to Jiyu Tinghan, and it was not until she pressed the send button that she felt the reality and threw the phone aside in great annoyance. It's really uncomfortable to feel helpless. But she still has so many tasks on her shoulders. Even if she has some relationship with Jiyu Tinghan, it is still insignificant compared to the Song family. Thinking about having to face Jiyu Tinghan again, Song Tao began to feel scared. At this moment, the phone suddenly vibrated and the ringtone rang. Song Tao picked it up and saw that it was true. "Speak of the devil and he will appear." "Hello." Jiyu Tinghan's voice was just like his personality, cold and low. It sounds unapproachable yet has a hint of temptation, which is the most deadly. Song Tao felt extremely guilty. "What's wrong? Are you free today? I want to treat you to a meal. I'm sorry about yesterday." Thinking of yesterday, Song Tao felt even more guilty. At this moment, she didn't want to see Jiyu Tinghan at all. "Otherwise, your conscience will be whipped again. You don't have to treat me to a meal. I just did you a favor, and you also said at the time that you would help me take back the Song Corporation." Jiyu Tinghan held the phone in his right hand and smiled softly. "If I want to help you, of course I have to meet and have a good talk." Song Tao will not miss any opportunity for herself. She clearly knew how important opportunity was to a person, and she couldn't avoid Jiyu Tinghan at all. "Okay, when?" "Tonight at 7 o'clock, should a restaurant, I will pick you up at your door. See you there." After hanging up the phone screen was still on the page where I sent a message to Baizhua. Song Tao felt guilty and turned off the screen directly. Song Tao stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself carefully for a long time. After confirming that her outfit was correct, she picked up the bag on the table and went downstairs. She saw a black Maserati parked at the intersection. As she approached, the windows of the black car slowly rolled down. Jiyu Tinghan, who was sitting in the driver's seat, had a calm expression, and just his profile was enough to attract attention. He turned his head and looked at Song Tao, who was walking slowly towards him. "Get in the car." Song Tao was sitting in the passenger seat and was about to reach out to fasten her seat belt. Jiyu Tinghan, who was beside her, reached out his hand with great familiarity and got so close to her that she could even smell a faint scent from him. She was stunned, thinking about what she had done, but still did not push him away. Jiyu Tinghan fastened her seat belt smoothly, and felt a little happy because she did not refuse. He stepped on the accelerator and drove to the door of the restaurant. The two got out of the car and walked into the restaurant. The waiter led them into a private room, where the atmosphere was romantic and the environment was quiet. There is also the faint sound of violin coming from the hall. The window is close to the lake, which is elegant and romantic. After the dishes were served, Song Tao felt a little embarrassed, and looked at Jiyu Tinghan, who was looking at her with a smile. He is quite different from the cold, elegant and unapproachable Jiyu Tinghan in our impression. She pursed her lips, picked up the wine glass and took a sip. "I knew I couldn't drink alcohol because I was pregnant, so there was no red wine in the glass. We are still married now, right?" Jiyu Tinghan suddenly said this, and Song Tao really wanted to answer no. But when she looked at Jiyu Tinghan's face, she seemed to have lost her soul, or perhaps it was because of her guilty conscience. Yes. She has a strong and decisive personality. She mostly relies on herself to do things and never thinks about asking for more or less help from others. On the one hand, she believes that she is the most reliable partner, but on the other hand, she is afraid of owing favors to others. Now, Song Tao owes a huge favor to someone, which gives her a headache. The more Song Tao thought about it, the more annoyed she became. She picked up the knife and tried to cut the steak, but she couldn't cut it properly. Jiyu Tinghan noticed this and raised his eyebrows slightly. He walked to Song Tao's side, put his hand on her hand, narrowed his eyes, and guided her movements. "I remember the last time we came here, your movements were so skillful and natural that I felt you could be a textbook for all the ladies." Of course Song Tao wouldn't say it was because she was absent-minded. His hands transmitted warmth to hers, and the few calluses that had formed over the years seemed to scratch her heart, making her feel a little uneasy. Chapter 17 today is different from the past. After cutting the steak, Jiu Tinghan returned to his seat and elegantly poured a glass of red wine. S. Song Tao picked up the red wine glass, which contained a specially mixed drink that was sweet, sour, and delicious. I was a little annoyed that I couldn't drink alcohol during pregnancy, but this drink was pretty good. It can be seen that Jiu Tinghan is sincere. She forced a smile and said, S. Jiu Tinghan seemed to find that Song Tao today was different from before. Compared to the former Song Tao who was invulnerable, decisive and cold-blooded, today's Song Tao is more humane, more real and lovely. Although she was a little stiff about having physical contact with him, she would not refuse. After dinner, Jiu Tinghan offered to take Song Tao home. I was not rejected and drove the car downstairs smoothly. Just as Song Tao was about to unbuckle her seat belt and get out of the car, Jiu Tinghan suddenly grabbed her arm, not too hard or too lightly, and did not hurt her. What's wrong? She looked up at Jiu Tinghan in confusion, and the next moment his face was magnified infinitely. Then a kiss fell on Song Tao's forehead, lightly falling on her heart yet extremely heavy. Good night. Song Tao's hand opened the car door in panic and embarrassment. She got out of the car in a hurry and returned home. She didn't feel safe until she closed the door. Today might be the most embarrassing and awkward day for her ever. It turns out that we should not do anything to let others down, otherwise it will always feel like an execution ground. But it seemed that apart from feeling guilty, Song Tao felt that there were some other emotions at work. Sitting in the car, Jiu Tinghan smiled as he watched Song Tao rush home. A shrewd man like him naturally noticed the change in Song Tao's mood. It was just a test just now. I wanted to know what Song Tao was thinking. But it doesn't matter what she is thinking, what matters is that she is willing to accept it. After a few days, Song Tao calmed down. After not seeing Jiu Tinghan for a few days, her heart has returned to its previous calm state. Just because she owed Jiu Tinghan a debt didn't mean she also owed debts to others. It is urgent to take back the shares that belong to Song Group. If you don't have shares in Song Group, no matter how much you do, it will all be just talk. Song Tao went downstairs and went to the place where she had agreed to meet with Baizhua, but when she arrived there, she found that Baizhua had not arrived yet. She sat in her seat and waited for more than half an hour before she saw Bai Chao rushing over. She frowned. In her memory, Baizhua had a very good sense of time and would always come early when scheduled. He would never be late. Did anything delay you today? Baizhua paused. He had never lied to Song Tao before and rarely hid things from her. Well, there's something going on in the dark web. Song Tao frowned even more tightly. There was nothing important on the dark web recently that could allow Bai Chao to delay time for more than half an hour. Moreover, based on her understanding of Baizhua, he would not speak so unconfidently. Baizhua, are you hiding something from me? It is said that women's intuition is incredibly accurate, especially those who are smart and understand you. The things that Baizhua wanted to bury deep in his heart were exposed to the sunlight and had nowhere to hide. He also knew that this matter could only be concealed for a while, not forever. As long as something happened to the Jiu family, Song Tao would definitely know about it. Instead of doing this, it's better to just say it directly. I sold the information you gave me about Jiu Tinghan. Song Tao widened her eyes, almost thinking she had heard it wrong. She suddenly put down the coffee in her hand, and her heart suddenly began to panic. What did you say? You sold those. Why didn't you tell me? Baizhua was silent and didn't say a word. If it were someone else, he might not choose to sell out. But Jiu Tinghan was too special, so special that he was wary and disgusted with him. Seeing that Baizhua didn't say anything, Song Tao was even more furious and asked, so you were late because you were doing business with those people? Baizhua, you are confused. How could you do this? After saying that, Song Tao no longer had the heart to discuss the Song family's affairs with him. If she just sits there and waits for death at this time, then Jiu Tinghan will be in danger. If the thing is in the hands of the organization, it is not a big deal. As long as it is safe in the short term, it may be possible to save it later. If Baizhua sold the information to other people, there is no guarantee that those people would not take the opportunity to resell it. She picked up her bag that was beside her and trotted out of the cafe. At the same time, Song Yun sat in the living room and drank expensive coffee elegantly. In order not to embarrass herself in front of those noble ladies, she specially learned the etiquette and manners of the aristocracy, and her every move was full of charm. At this moment, the cell phone rang, and she glanced at the screen and smiled. "How's it going?" Everything is going well. We have already observed her whereabouts, and the people we arranged are on their way." After hearing these words, Song Yun finally breathed a sigh of relief. "It seems that the money and energy I spent during this period of time have paid off, and I can finally vent my anger. Okay. But no matter how well the process is arranged, the result is not as important. Do you understand?" "I understand." Song Yun drank the last sip of coffee in the cup. The bitter taste of coffee lingered in her mouth, keeping her brain awake at all times. All of this was hard-earned for her, and no matter who tried to take it away, she would fight back desperately. "I'm waiting for your good news." Song Tao hurried out of the coffee shop, got into the car, quickly stepped on the accelerator, and drove straight to the GU building. The vehicles were speeding on the road, and Song Tao's heart was tightening. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to just sit back and do nothing about it. If the information about this matter was only on the dark web, Gu's information would not have been exposed to the air so quickly. At least there would be a thin layer of protection in her heart. But it's different now. If Gu Tinghan encountered danger because of her, she would really feel guilty. Thinking of this, her heart tightened. However, at this moment, a black car suddenly rushed out from the corner, so fast that Song Tao had no time to react. Song Tao widened her eyes and tried to turn the steering wheel, but the next second the black car rushed straight towards Song Tao as if it was risking its life. Through the glass, Song Tao clearly saw that the driver was a man. His face looked crazy and terrified, and looked extremely strange. But Song Tao had no time to think, she was overwhelmed by the huge impact. Then she heard a loud crash and the sound of glass breaking. Then Song Tao's consciousness became blurred. She vaguely felt severe pain in her stomach and blood slowly flowing. Her thighs and the seat seemed to be stained with blood. By Zhua, Gu Tinghan. Song Tao's vision became blurred and dark. In the last moment of her consciousness, she murmured something but received no response. Chapter 18 Warmth. She wanted to reach out and touch her belly, but she no longer had the strength to do so. Song Tao closed her eyes and her hands fell limply on the seat. I could hear the sound of cars and screams from the crowd. The ambulance 120 and 110 rushed to the scene and it was in chaos. "Quick! Get the people out of the car." After several people opened the car, a doctor just picked up Song Tao's body and reacted after a few seconds of stunned. "She seems to be a pregnant woman." The driver's seat where Song Tao was sitting was already stained with blood, and the bright red blood was shocking to the eye. Even without an examination, the results seemed to be clear at a glance. The other doctors didn't say anything and silently carried Song Tao onto the stretcher. At this time, Gu Tinghan had just finished a meeting. He rubbed his brows slightly tiredly, looked up at the clock hanging on the wall, thought that the time was almost up, took out his cell phone and dialed Song Tao's number. Beep, beep. After calling for a long time without any answer, Gu Tinghan frowned, a little worried. He stood up and prepared to drive to Song Tao's house to find her, when his cell phone suddenly vibrated and rang. It was Song Tao calling. Gu Tinghan answered the phone and thought it would be Song Tao's clear and bright voice, but it was an unfamiliar female voice. "Excuse me, are you a friend of the owner of this phone? She was in a car accident and is now in Runher Hospital. If it's convenient, please come over." Gu Tinghan was stunned for a moment, then became furious and worried. He put down his phone and said gloomily, "Prepare the car and go to Runher Hospital." He originally thought that he and Song Tao were just playing around, but he didn't know when the cracks began to appear in his heart that was as cold as a stone. Runher Hospital. The hospital is always brightly lit at night. The red light in the emergency room was bright, like Song Tao's signal for help, exactly the same color as her blood. Gu Tinghan sat in the corridor outside the emergency room. The assistant stood aside anxiously and fearfully, looking from time to time at Gu Tinghan, whose face was as dark as the bottom of a pot and who was always on the verge of a rage. "Mr. Gu, how about you?" Gu Tinghan suddenly stood up. He has been in the business world for many years and has encountered many shady tricks. He no longer believes in coincidence or chance. He only believes that everything depends on human effort. Go and investigate this car accident. Make sure you get to the bottom of it, no matter how much it costs. The assistant was startled, and when he saw Gu Tinghan's seriousness, his expression changed as well. Yes, Mr. Gu. The red light in the emergency room was on for several hours, from dusk to late at night. For the first time, Gu Tinghan felt the uneasy feeling of sitting on pins and needles while sitting in his chair. Suddenly, the red light in the emergency room went out, the door opened, and a doctor in a white coat walked out. Gu Tinghan hurried forward and asked worriedly, "Doctor, how is it?" "His life is saved. We must take good care of ourselves in the future and absolutely no problems can occur. And also..." The doctor looked at Gu Tinghan's slightly tired face, thought of the age of the woman in the emergency room, and asked, "Are you that lady's husband?" Gu Tinghan answered without hesitation, I am her husband. She lost the baby in her belly. As her husband, you must pay attention to enlighten her." Gu Tinghan's heart sank suddenly. He is the child's father, and although he has not seen the child yet, he feels very sad. "Okay, the surgery is now complete. He will be transferred to the general ward in a moment. You must stay with the patient." After the doctor left, Gu Tinghan stood there in silence for a long time. This car accident deprived him of his child's life and Song Tao's health. The timing was such a coincidence. After he went downstairs to complete the formalities for Song Tao, he returned to the ward. It was not until he saw Song Tao lying on the hospital bed that Gu Tinghan felt for sure that he had not lost her. Song Tao is always so proud and strong, serious and powerful in her daily life, and rarely shows such a vulnerable side. Maybe she also often has moments of weakness, but she just doesn't want to show it in front of him. The smell of disinfectant filled every corner of the hospital ward. The ward was very quiet, with only the sound of glucose solution dripping from the stent, which seemed extremely depressing. Gu Tinghan sat beside the bed, looking at the pale Song Tao lying motionless on the bed for so long that his legs became numb. But he seemed to have made up his mind and refused to move. Song Tao's consciousness slowly returned, and the dull pain in her body made her much more awake. Her eyelashes fluttered gently like a butterfly, beautiful yet fragile. Water, water. Her throat was dry and itchy, which was so uncomfortable that her voice became hoarse. Song Tao's vision was a little blurry. But she saw a man and spoke subconsciously. When Gu Tinghan heard Song Tao's voice, his tense nerves finally relaxed a little. He quickly poured a glass of water, then helped Song Tao to sit up, drink it. Song Tao's body seemed to have lost all strength, and she leaned stiffly on the hospital bed like a puppet. After drinking the water, she finally regained some energy. Thinking back to the moment when the car accident happened, her heart sank. My child, is he still there?" Song Tao suddenly raised her eyes and looked at Gu Tinghan, and the first thing she thought of was the child. At that moment her stomach hurt so much, the pain was very clear. She guessed the result and knew it would be difficult to keep the child under such circumstances, but Song Tao did not give up. This is her child. He has not yet opened his eyes to see the world, nor heard the voices of the world. He cannot leave her like this. Gu Tinghan took the cup, his face darkened, he pursed his lips, put the cup back on the table without saying a word. The answer seemed to be obvious, but Song Tao chose to deceive herself and was unwilling to accept this fact. "Why aren't you talking? My child must be fine, right? I've already thought of a name for him. If it's a boy, he'll be called..." Gu Tinghan sighed, unable to bear seeing Song Tao like this, and interrupted, "Song Tao, the child was not saved, but we will have another child." The moment Gu Tinghan finished saying this, Song Tao's tears immediately fell. This was her child, and losing him was an extremely painful and self-reproachful experience. She failed to protect her children. Song Tao closed her eyes and turned her head away, not wanting to expose this side of her to Gu Tinghan's sight. She was silent for a long time, immersed in grief and unable to extricate herself. Chapter 19 I Won't Blame You. Gu Tinghan, I failed to save the child. Do you think the child will blame me? If I hadn't gotten in the car, this situation wouldn't have happened. Song Tao was silent for a long time before she spoke these words. Gu Tinghan felt even more grief-stricken after hearing this. He looked at the haggard Song Tao with heartache and replied, "This is fate, we can't escape it. I want to rest for a while." She still can't accept this fact. No matter how strong a woman is, she will fall into depression when faced with such a situation. This is from a mother's perspective. After saying this, Song Tao hid under the quilt. She was the only one in this small space. She reached out and touched her empty belly. A little life had been here, but she couldn't keep it. The pain at that moment was so clear, it seemed like it was just a second ago. But at that moment, he was gone. Gu Tinghan did not stop Song Tao. He chose to give her time and space to think it over. She has to deal with this situation by herself, no one else can help her much. He left the ward and his assistant was waiting beside him. Seeing him come out, he hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Mr. Gu, the manager has sorted out this month's financial report and asked when you will return to the company." Gu Tinghan frowned, glanced at the ward subconsciously, was silent for a moment as if thinking, and then replied, "Prepare the car. I'll go back to the company right away. Then tell Mrs. Wang at home to stew some nourishing soup. Tell me when it's ready." The assistant immediately understood what Gu Tinghan meant. "Yes, I'll do it right away." On weekdays, Gu Tinghan only felt that time passed very quickly in the company, and handling work made him feel at ease. However, at this moment he was extremely anxious. Although he was in the company, his heart had already drifted to the hospital. Her mood was so low at the moment, she must be very lonely there alone. Thinking of this, Gu Tinghan's heart tightened, and he felt so uncomfortable that it was difficult for him to breathe. "I want to prepare a car to go to the hospital to visit her, care for her, and help her get out of the haze as soon as possible." Hospital. Baizhua came into the ward carrying a bouquet of fruits and flowers, and saw Song Tao leaning on the bed with a pale face and a dazed look. This was the first time Baizhua saw Song Tao so distraught, fragile and sad. Thinking that this matter was inextricably linked to him, he felt extremely guilty and put the things he brought aside. "Song Tao, here I come." Song Tao looked up at Baizhua for a long time without saying anything. She knew that the cause of the car accident was the out-of-control black car and had nothing to do with Bai Chao, but she still felt a little resentful. When Baizhua saw that Song Tao didn't say anything, his sense of guilt was magnified infinitely. "Song Tao, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, none of this would have happened. It's all my fault. I don't blame you." Song Tao's expression was terrifyingly calm, even a little too calm. She said this dryly and then sighed, "I can't keep this child." "Song Tao, don't say that. This matter has nothing to do with you." I. Baizhua became more and more anxious as he spoke, and he couldn't even utter the last sentence, as if his mouth was tied in a knot. Song Tao's eyes were dull and her empty heart made her feel extremely lonely. She wanted to cry loudly to vent her inner pain, but her tears seemed to have dried up. "Baizhua, I understand your thoughts and I won't blame you. But I don't really want to talk right now. I appreciate your kindness. Take the things back and let me calm down by myself." After saying that, Song Tao turned his head away and said nothing more. Seeing this, Baizhua could only sigh, look at Song Tao several times, pick up his things, turn around and leave the ward. After Baizhua left, the ward fell into silence again, so quiet that Song Tao was a little scared. The scenes of the car accident kept appearing in her mind and she couldn't get rid of them. Song Tao licked her dry lips. Was this the child's revenge on her? Gu Tinghan hurriedly dealt with the remaining matters of the company. The assistant just finished answering Wang Soa's call and walked up to Gu Tinghan. "Boss Gu, Wang Soa has already cooked the soup." He closed the document and stood up, glancing down at the black watch on his right wrist, silently calculating the time in his mind. "Okay, let's go back to the villa now." Vehicles were driving quickly on the road, from the company to the villa, and then from the villa to the hospital. Gu Tinghan and his assistant walked into the ward carrying large and small bags. The assistant put the things aside and tactfully left the ward, leaving the space for Gu Tinghan and Song Tao. Gu Tinghan took the insulated lunch box out of the bag, carefully filled a bowl of chicken soup for her, and handed it to Song Tao after testing the temperature. "I asked Mrs. Wang to make this. I specially asked her to make it lighter. You can try the taste." She hadn't eaten anything since she woke up, so it would be a lie to say she wasn't hungry. Song Tao took the bowl and chopsticks obediently, and put them aside after drinking the soup. "Here are some tonics. You can take them in the afternoon. You may be a little bored in the ward, so I will try to stay here with you. I asked the doctor when I came here just now. You can eat most fruits. What do you want to eat? I will arrange for someone to go downstairs and buy it for you." Gu Tinghan said a lot without taking a breath. This seemed to be the first time that Song Tao heard Jiyu Tinghan, who was very frugal with words, speak so many words in front of her in one breath. She pursed her lips, then said, "I'm not picky." Good. After a while, the assistant came into the ward carrying many bags and picked out some of the fruits that could be bought. Jiyu Tinghan didn't mind peeling them one by one for her. "Are you daydreaming? Have an apple." Jiyu Tinghan's voice came to my ears, and an apple appeared in my sight. Song Tao took the apple, took a bite and replied, "If you keep going like this, I'm going to get fat." Song Tao only had a minor operation, but Jiyu Tinghan contacted many doctors for this operation, turned down his work, and sat outside the operating room for more than 3 hours. After she knew this, she was stunned for a long time, staring at the snow-white bed sheet and didn't come back to her senses for a while. "Is it bad?" Song Tao suddenly fell silent. After experiencing so much human fickleness and the vicissitudes of the world, she became cautious and did not dare to trust others easily. She asked tentatively, "Jiyu Tinghan, why do you have to stay with me all the time?" Their marriage was just for their own benefit and was a show in front of outsiders. The two even signed a divorce agreement. It can be said that they have nothing to do with each other. Chapter 20 Fatal Attraction. But Jiyu Tinghan approached her again and again, giving her meticulous care and protection. It would be a lie to say that she was not touched. She is not afraid of others being nice to her. What she is afraid of is that when she reciprocates, the other person has already left. "You are my wife." Jiyu Tinghan only said this sentence and said nothing else. But for Song Tao, this sentence is enough. The sun slowly climbed out from the horizon, revealing its face, then slowly rose to its highest point, and then set. But Jiyu Tinghan was with Song Tao every moment. He deliberately moved his office computer into the ward. He spoke as little as before, but his actions spoke louder than words. Jiyu Tinghan is a person who is not very good at words and expression. He is a businessman, and he believes that smooth talking is far less effective than action. So he would rather prove his strength through actions. The same is true in relationships. One day, Song Tao was lying on the bed looking at the scenery outside. For no reason, I thought of the time when I was in college and was daydreaming in class. I was so hungry that I wanted to go to a Japanese restaurant for a meal right after class. I particularly like the Japanese restaurant in the university town in the south of the city. I think about it every day and never get tired of eating there. Jiyu Tinghan raised his eyes and glanced at Song Tao, but didn't say, "I'll take you to eat when you're discharged from the hospital." Instead, he quietly opened his phone and sent a message to his assistant. "Go to the Japanese food store in the south of the city and pack some for me." Song Tao's unintentional words came true. When she looked at the Japanese food on the table, she couldn't help but glance at Jiyu Tinghan. He sat there typing away at the computer keyboard, his golden glasses frames gleaming in the sunlight, just like him. Dazzling. She looked away and lowered her head to eat the Japanese food. Jiyu Tinghan paused what he was doing, turned around and saw Song Tao eating happily. He couldn't help but smile, then continued to work seriously. After careful treatment, Song Tao's body has almost recovered. In addition to facing discharge from the hospital, she also had another very important issue. About the car accident. Song Tao's expression became serious, he narrowed his eyes slightly, and his eyes were terribly cold. From the moment the accident happened, she felt something was wrong. "It's just that I'm weak and can't take care of myself, so I really don't have the extra energy to deal with these things. Now that I think about it carefully, that incident was full of loopholes." As far as she knew, the driver did not die in the car accident, but was only injured. After waking up, he chose to commit suicide the first thing he did. Coupled with the desperate and crazy expression on his face when he was driving, she found it hard to believe that this was a coincidence. The more he thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. Song Tao felt nervous after he arranged for someone to investigate the matter. But what she didn't know was that Jiyu Tinghan had already arranged for people to investigate, and he had already found some clues. After completing the discharge procedures, Song Tao sat in the passenger seat. Jiyu Tinghan did not let his assistant drive, but sat in the driver's seat himself. "Dao, I always feel something is wrong about your car accident. Do you remember what happened?" Jiyu Tinghan's sudden words made Song Tao's heart tremble. She was not afraid that Jiyu Tinghan would find out the real culprit, but because this matter involved the dark web and Bai Chao. She grabbed the corner of her clothes nervously, feeling guilty and afraid, and answered, I can't remember clearly. Besides, car accidents are unpredictable, they are emergencies. Song Tao's poor acting skills could not be hidden from Gu Tinghan at all. His calm heart became restless as if a huge wave was stirred up. Gu Tinghan already knew that Song Tao had met Baizhua before and got into the car in a hurry after meeting him, so his intuition told him that this matter was related to Baizhua. If it was anyone else it would be fine, but the other person was Bai Chao, and his thoughts on Song Tao were obvious. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, pursed his lips, remained silent for a long time, and did not step on the accelerator. Gu Tinghan's reaction clearly showed that he was angry, and Song Tao also guessed that she couldn't hide it from Gu Tinghan. But she had no choice, she couldn't let the dark web be exposed to Gu Tinghan's sight. Then tell me, who did you meet before you drove? What did you say? I'm sorry, but I want to handle this matter myself because it involves too many things and I don't want you to be involved in the storm. Song Tao was unwilling to tell the truth until the end. She could only pray that Gu Tinghan's investigation would stop here and not find out so much. In Gu Tinghan's opinion, Song Tao's hesitating and unwillingness to speak was a cover-up for Baizhua, an act of protecting Baizhua. He was very unhappy in his heart, but he had nothing to say. After a moment, Gu Tinghan stepped on the accelerator and drove the car quickly. Song Tao finally breathed a sigh of relief after returning to her room. Although his dodging made Gu Tinghan angry, he managed to deal with it and was able to delay the situation for a while. So the most important thing now is to investigate the car accident. Song Tao acts decisively and ruthlessly, but that doesn't mean she will kill innocent people or provoke others. She has always adhered to the principle of not offending others unless they offend me. But not everyone is like her. Even if Song Tao did not provoke them, they would kill her at any cost. Since they can do it, Song Tao will not let them go easily. I lost my child in this car accident, but I managed to survive and save my life. Song Tao will not let herself suffer this in vain. Song Tao used all his connections and resources and finally got a recording from a friend. Mr. Wang, you have to think it over. Not only are you in debt, but you're also addicted to drugs. The rest of your life is ruined. But it doesn't matter if you're ruined, but don't you care about your wife and children? They've suffered so much with you. Who will support them if you die? How about this, you help me do something, and whether it succeeds or not, you can't live. After the task is completed, I will give your wife some money so that she and the children can live a good life. You have done your part. Okay, I'll do it. Tell me, what do I need to do? I will give you the location and the license plate number of a car. You don't have to worry about it. Just drive your car into it. Whether you died in the car accident or not, I don't want to see you again. The recording stopped abruptly here, but Song Yun's voice still echoed in Song Tao's ears. She chuckled, feeling it was extremely ironic that the person who wanted to kill her was actually her relative. But it's not the first time that Song Yun has done this. If she can do it, don't blame her for disregarding the so-called blood ties. Chapter 21 It's my fault. Song Tao originally thought that she would feel a little heartbroken and angry after knowing the truth. But she was very calm. She turned off the recording with an expressionless face and made plans secretly in her mind. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. She opened the door and saw Baizhua standing in front of her. Baizhua saw that Song Tao returned home safely, his complexion gradually returned to normal, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, I came to see you suddenly, I hope I didn't disturb you. Song Tao shook her head. After the car accident in which she lost her child, her personality became much calmer and quieter. Come in and sit down. I'm alone at home, so why would I bother you? Good. Baizhua walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. He took the water poured by Song Tao but hesitated to drink it. His face looked very conflicted. After thinking for a long time, he finally spoke. Song Tao, I've thought about this for a long time, and I feel like there are some things I must tell you. Song Tao's heart sank suddenly, and her intuition had vaguely told her the answer. But, Baizhua is also a comrade in arms and a partner to her. She didn't want the relationship between the two of them to become awkward. You say. I was definitely wrong about what happened that day. I shouldn't have done anything without your consent, but the news leaked out and caused you to have a car accident. It's my fault. Song Tao's lips moved. She wanted to tell Baizhua that this matter actually had little to do with him. Even if she hadn't been in a hurry to find Gu Tinghan that day, she would have been hit by a car later. Baizhua just accelerated the process. Just as she was about to explain, Baizhua said, "I don't want you to forgive me now, I just want to express my feelings. You and Jiyu Tinghan were husband and wife before, even if there was no love, you were legally married. Now that you are divorced, it proves that I still have a chance. Song Tao, I will always protect you silently. I know you don't like me now, but I can wait until you are willing to accept me." At the end of his speech, Baizhua also became excited. This was the first time he had real feelings for a woman, and he didn't want to give up easily. Song Tao pursed her lips, after spending some time with Jiyu Tinghan. She discovered that this man, with whom she had been living for more than 5 years, was not completely ignorant of relationships, and she felt moved at many moments. But she had no other thoughts about Baizhua. In Song Tao's eyes, Baizhua is just a good friend and a partner who helps her take back the Song family. She knew clearly that if she softened her heart and did not reject Bai Chao at this moment, he would think that there was still a chance, and doing so would only make him fall deeper and deeper. Therefore, a short pain is worse than a long pain. Song Tao was silent for a moment, organizing his words to make them sound less hurtful. After all, Baizhua is her good friend, and no matter from which angle, she doesn't want to make Baizhua too sad. "Baizhua, I understand your thoughts and I am grateful that you like me. But feelings are not that simple. I admire your talent, but my feelings for you are just those of a friend, nothing more. Although I have signed a divorce agreement with Jiyu Tinghan, some things cannot be ended immediately. I just want to deal with the Song family's affairs seriously now, and I don't want to have a new relationship for the time being, so I hope you will think about it carefully." Baizhua knew that he would most likely be rejected if he said it, but he didn't want to give up so easily. Besides, after saying it, he has a number plate, which makes Song Tao look at him as more than just a friend. "I know you will reject me, and I don't expect you to agree to my confession. I just want to protect you forever." Having said this, Song Tao couldn't continue to attack Baizhua, so she could only nod. "Baizhua, I hope you can think carefully about what I said." Being rejected by the person he liked, Bai Chao felt a little lost and sad. But he hoped that he would become more courageous as the battle continued, so he stood up and said, "I know. Song Tao, I won't bother you anymore, you should have a good rest. And, you can really consider me." After saying these words, Baizhua turned and left the house. Song Tao was the only one left sitting on the sofa. She sighed and returned to her room. Song Tao didn't tell anyone about Baizhua and herself. She just hoped that Baizhua could understand what she meant. But things continued to develop. In a corner, a conspiracy is quietly sprouting. Studio. Tongcheng's economy is developing rapidly. A small house in the city is worth a fortune. Many newly established small companies can only buy a studio in the suburbs of Tongcheng. However, in this small studio, there is a secret that is unknown to the public. Wang Qixin sat in front of the computer desk, opened a folder, and looked at the plan inside with a sinister smile. "I'm in this godforsaken place right now, but soon I'll be in the center of Tongcheng. By then, goose will be my meal." Wang Qixin spent 100 million yuan and bet all his savings on this one. "As long as we can defeat Jiyu this time, the benefits in the future will be countless." He read the document again and called his assistant. "Inform the journalists that our first project will be released soon and ask them to increase publicity efforts. Gu's first project this quarter is electronic technology, which will be available on the 3rd of next month." Wang Qixin already had a plan. As long as he got there first, he could reap all the benefits. Then everything that Jiyu has prepared for this project will be in vain. By then, let alone a thorough investigation of the project leak, Jiyu itself would be in a difficult situation. On October 21st, a newly established small company in Tongcheng released a plan, achieving a major breakthrough in the field of electronic technology. What surprised everyone the most was that this small company with only a few employees actually came up with an excellent plan that was comparable to that of large companies. Chapter 22, Uncertainty. Wang Qixin became the most frequently mentioned person at the business table. People are predicting his future, and some reporters even call him a dark horse in the business world. Compared with Wang Qixin's triumphant mood, the entire Jiyu family was in a state of dejection. Jiyu Tinghan convened an emergency meeting. His face was unusually serious and gloomy, and he said, "I think everyone knows about the small company in Tongcheng. The solution they used is what we have been preparing. Everyone who participated in the design of this plan knows that this plan is the focus of GU's future development, and GU has invested a lot of money, manpower, and material resources for this. After saying that, GU Tinghan glanced at everyone. A man in his 40s said, "Boss GU, isn't there an emergency plan? In order to prevent theft, apply. B, now is the time to use it." As soon as he finished speaking, the assistant hurried to the meeting room. "Mr. GU, that company has released a new solution, which is our PLA. B." It turned out to be just as he expected. GU Tinghan narrowed his eyes. It seemed that someone had obtained GU's secret information. What GU's company lost was far more than just this electronic technology plan, but also all of GU's subsequent plans and company plans. As long as the small company is willing, they can completely copy GU's model and develop into the second GU's. Everyone in the conference room hung their heads, feeling hopeless. If the fat meat of electronic technology is snatched away by that company, then GUS will fall into the quagmire of difficulty in capital turnover. GU Tinghan's face was extremely ugly, his voice became low, and his intimidating aura made everyone terrified. "You don't have any idea, do you?" GU Tinghan stood up and said, "Let's adjourn the meeting." After a few days, the news that the GU family had fallen into a trough spread throughout Tongcheng. Since its establishment, GU's company has never encountered any major storms and has always been well managed by GU Tinghan. But this time he suffered a huge setback. GU's and GU Tinghan were already a hot topic, with the media competing to report on them. GU's news once again dominated the headlines. There were many reporters surrounding GU's building. After seeing GU Tinghan walk out of the door, they rushed to him like crazy, and pointed microphones of all sizes directly at GU Tinghan. "Mr. GU, GU's capital turnover is difficult now, and everyone is speculating about the future of GU's. Would you mind expressing your opinion? Boss GU, everyone is criticizing you for not managing the company well. Do you have any rebuttal?" The reporters crowded around the GU building. GU Tinghan was stuck in the middle, frowned, took the microphone from a reporter, and said, "First of all, as the executive president of GU's group, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their attention to GU's. GU's is in trouble. I will do my best to save it. As for why GU's is in trouble, God is watching. The villain will always suffer the consequences." After saying that, GU Tinghan got into the car amid the surprise of the reporters. He has always hated traitors. Whenever he found anyone having improper transactions with other companies, no matter how big or small the amount was or whether that person was in a high position or not, GU Tinghan would fire them without hesitation and prosecute them directly. Everyone in the GU family is very clear about his character, and not many people are willing to throw themselves into the fire. But in the current situation, it is obvious that there is an internal thief. Check the details of that small company. The assistant who was driving nodded. At the same time, Wang Chixin was sitting in the studio watching the real-time news. GU Tinghan on TV is handsome and his tone of voice is neither humble nor arrogant. God is watching what you do, and villains will always suffer the consequences. Wang Chixin snorted coldly and turned off the TV with disdain. GU Tinghan, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for having a good wife. After saying that, he opened his phone and entered the stock market page. GU's stock price fell to the lowest point since its establishment. He hummed a little tune smugly and dialed his assistant's number. "There will be a large-scale bidding meeting in Tongcheng in a while. Please put your name on my behalf. I want to compete directly with GU Tinghan." As GU's family is the top leader of Tongcheng, even if GU Tinghan knew that he would lose completely, he would still come to participate. "And I will use GU's plan to win the first place in front of him." Wang Chixin could even imagine GU Tinghan's extremely ugly expression. He laughed arrogantly. "Remember to invite all the media to attend." "Yes." The men around him responded without question. Song Tao did not go home, but went to the Song family's old house. The car meandered up the winding mountain road until it reached halfway up the mountain. What comes into view is a fountain, with neatly trimmed flowers and plants around it. The villa is surrounded by mountains and water, and is very majestic. It's still the same here as before. Song Tao had just turned off the engine when the old butler came over quickly the moment he saw her. He looked hesitant and looked at her carefully, until he confirmed that it was the eldest lady. His eyes suddenly became tearful. "You? The old butler opened his mouth, unable to speak. Butler Pai, long time no see. Song Tao smiled slightly and greeted generously. Well, everyone thought she was dead, so it was inevitable that they would be excited to see her. Butler Pai has served the Song family for more than 40 years and has already reached retirement age. His father had originally prepared for him to enjoy his old age, but unexpectedly something unexpected happened and the house ended up in a new owner. It's hard for him to be willing to keep this family business for his father. Miss, it's really you. I thought you had already. But I saw the news, and I knew you would come back. Mr. Song treated him well, so even if the owner of this place changed, he refused to leave. If he hadn't seen the news of Song Tao and Jiu Tinghan's marriage on TV, he would have thought that he would never see this child in his lifetime. Wow. I was wondering who was making such a fuss. It turns out Dao Dao is back home. Song Yun was wearing a white professional suit, with a maid behind her holding an umbrella for her. Chapter 23 Return to the Old House. Song Yun looked at the two people who were in deep affection with master and servant, and a playful smile appeared on the corner of her lips. This woman is really lucky. She escaped death twice. If it weren't for Jiu Tinghan, Song Tao would have died long ago. But she happens to be the daughter-in-law of the Jiu family. The Jiu family's influence extends in all directions. If they want to take action against her, they need to be careful and use someone else's knife to kill her. Next time you take action, you have to wait for a good time. Butler Pai didn't have time to reminisce with his former young master as Song Yun's voice brought him back to his senses. They say that only when your family is here can you consider yourself at home. At most, I am at home again. Song Tao especially emphasized the word self. This statement undoubtedly shows that Song Yun is not regarded as a family member, but also a declaration of sovereignty. After all, Song Yun has been in the business world for many years. After hearing this, she remained calm and warmly welcomed Song Tao into their house. Dao Dao, come in quickly. It's sunny outside. By the way, why didn't Tinghan come with you? To be fair, she really wanted to establish a relationship with the Jiu family, which was equivalent to holding a mountain of gold. If her niece had died, Jiu Tinghan would not have competed with her that day. Unfortunately, now, this mountain of gold has become Song Tao's backing, and the Jiu family, whom she most wanted to make friends with, has also become an enemy that she must guard against. Song Tao was not polite. After entering the room, she sat down in the middle of the sofa. After looking around, she chuckled. Thank you for helping me take care of the house so well, but in the future, I have plenty of time to manage this family, so I won't bother you anymore. At this point, she couldn't even call this woman auntie. Dao Dao, it's too formal for you to say that. We are family. Song Yun could tell that she wanted to take back the old house. But she won't give it up. Not that I care about a house. This is the old house of the Song family. If Song Tao takes it back, wouldn't she be seizing the sovereignty? Song Tao raised her eyebrows slightly and took out a contract from her bag. It clearly said, house lease contract. Party A is Song Tao and Party B is Song Yun. It was written in black and white on the paper, and it was particularly clear. Song Yun's face turned red with anger, but she still maintained her noble lady's airs. She raised her eyes and glared at Song Tao with a very unfriendly tone, and said, Dao Dao, what do you mean? Song Tao leisurely placed the contract in Song Yun's hand and blinked innocently. My aunt, have you forgotten? This Song family mansion is where the Song family's direct relatives live, and it's also where the Song family's heirs live. My parents' names are on the property certificate. Now that my parents are dead, the house should be inherited by me. You live in my house, so you should pay the rent. Don't you agree? Song Tao was right, the Song family mansion was a symbol of the Song family's power. This is also the reason why Song Yun must move into the big house. Song Yun was in a dilemma. Moving out would undoubtedly tell outsiders that she had lost the management rights of the Song family, but if she signed the contract, she would become an outsider. The president of Song Group actually has to rent someone else's house. She smiled dryly and advised Song Tao kindly, Dao Dao, what are you doing? We are all family, why do you have to? Before Song Yun could say anything, Song Tao took out a pen from her bag with a smile. She signed her name next to Party A, with every move being extremely elegant. This is her home, her parents' property. Song Yun has usurped their throne. If she doesn't use some ruthless methods, she might even lose her life. Song Yun, from the day my parents died and you moved into the Song family mansion, all the rent must be returned to me, otherwise I will sue you in court. The day of the Song family shareholders meeting is coming up. At that time, everyone else is running for election, but you are deeply involved in a lawsuit for seizing other people's houses. Isn't it ironic? Song Yun's face turned pale in an instant, and her heart suddenly began to panic. It seems that Song Tao is not only eyeing the Song family mansion, but also the management rights of the Song company. She snatched the pen from Song Tao's hand and signed her name neatly. Song Tao, you are so cruel. Since you are short of this little money, I will be merciful and give it all to you. Song Tao pretended not to hear Song Yun's ridicule. She raised her eyebrows, and the aura around her was no less than that of the old fox Song Yun. Does the guest need to continue staying here? If so, the rent is. Song Tao kept calling Song Yun guest, which made Song Yun speechless. No more. But even if she doesn't live here, so what? As long as she keeps the Song family firmly in her hands, Song Tao can do nothing. Song Tao, don't go too far. What if you take back the mansion? Now the Song family is firmly in my hands. Do you think that having a house will be of great use? You are just dreaming. At this moment, Song Yun tore off the elegant and noble mask of a lady, revealing her original jealous and ugly heart. She threw the contract into Song Tao's hand. Song Tao, we'll see. Chapter 24. The Culprit. Song Yun arranged for the servants to move all her things away, and their whole house suddenly became emptier. After moving everything, she left. Song Tao walked slowly up the stairs. The exquisite and gorgeous handrails and the golden and shining chandeliers are symbols of the Song family's success. The potted plants on both sides of the stairs were taken care of by the mother herself when she was alive. Even the oil paintings hanging on both sides of the corridor are the same as they used to be. She walked all the way to the room where she used to sleep. After not living here for a long time, Song Yun had turned it into a storage room, storing various things. Tears welled up in her eyes at some point, not out of fear or sadness. Instead, Song Tao was moved and excited from the bottom of her heart, and she really wanted to tell her parents. I took it back. Taking back the Song family mansion is only the first step for Song Tao. After that, she will use all resources to take back the management rights of the Song company. Let Song Yun and Song Chuchu suffer the consequences of their own actions and avenge their past grudges. Song Chuchu didn't expect that she just went out for a walk, and when she came back she found that the mansion she used to live in had been returned to its original owner. She looked at the small villa and stamped her feet in disgust. Mom, why did you give the mansion to that bitch Song Tao? Such a nice mansion, the land alone is worth a fortune, we really lost this time. After watching the servant put things in order, Song Yun walked over to Song Chuchu and sneered. So what if we give it to her? The shareholders' meeting will be held soon, and Song Tao will definitely go. As long as we have the management rights in our hands by then, she won't be a big deal. When the time comes, we will use some resources to suppress her, and we will be able to move back in no time. Song Chuchu sat on the sofa dissatisfied. She was used to living in a luxurious and magnificent mansion, and suddenly moving here was a huge source of discomfort for her. If her rich sisters knew about this, she would be laughed at. Song Tao actually wants to take the mansion for herself. We are already very tolerant of her by giving her a little face. She really doesn't know what's good for her. Compared to Song Chuchu's superficiality and stupidity, Song Yun seemed much more profound. She smiled meaningfully. Yes. She doesn't know what's good for her. As her aunt, I have to teach her a lesson. Let her know what to take and what not to take. Song Yun doesn't believe in the saying that if you take a step back, the sky will be wider. She only believes in retreating in order to advance. Mom, what should we do? If Song Tao has the support of GU Corporation, it won't be difficult for her to take back Song Corporation. Although Song Chuchu is simple-minded, she has been exposed to some business affairs with Song Yun and can see the situation clearly through what she has seen and heard. The current situation is very unfriendly to them. This was the small villa where they used to live, which was an excellent place to live compared to ordinary people. But it is far from the Song family mansion. Song Yun has personally experienced the saying that it is easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. The GU family is in such a big mess now. Isn't this a good opportunity given to us by God? Song Yun curled her lips and smiled. Her eyes were like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue, cold and cruel, and she looked at the dusty coffee table and reached out to touch it. You see, if you don't take care of something over time, even the most valuable things will get dusty. What about a rich girl who has been away from home for a long time? How is she different from those who come from remote areas? The Song family mansion. Song Tao sat on the sofa watching the news on TV and was silent for a long time. Only Butler Pai and Song Tao were left in the huge living room, and the atmosphere was tense. Our reporter has received the latest news that Goose has been in a slump since it encountered difficulties in cash flow. Just yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Goose stock fell to the lowest point. Many people have a negative attitude towards Goose, believing that the once big tree will soon fall. Butler Pai thought about the relationship between Song Tao and Jiu Tinghan, and after thinking a lot, he still didn't know how to start, so he could only say, "Miss, Goose Company is indeed in a difficult situation right now, but every large company will experience some ups and downs. I believe it will pass soon." Will it be over soon? Song Tao knew better than anyone how much of Goo's information had been leaked. All of Goo's plans for the next 6 months have been obtained by others, which means that Jiu must survive these 6 months. But how to survive? Guilt and remorse swept over me like a violent storm. Song Tao took out her cell phone and dialed Jiu Tinghan's number. It rang for a long time before she heard his voice. "Hello." Jiu Tinghan's voice is like a mellow red wine that has been precipitated over the years, noble and elegant, revealing a noble aura. Now, it seemed that he had been working overtime for a long time, and his voice revealed deep fatigue. Song Tao had a lot more to say. She wanted to apologize to Jiu Tinghan and then help the Jiu family get through this difficult time. But the moment she heard Jiu Tinghan's voice, she was speechless. "What's wrong?" Jiu Tinghan spoke again. "I will help you." Song Tao held it in for a long time and only uttered this sentence. The moment the TV stopped at the moment when Goo's stock price plummeted, her heart ached and her tone became serious. After saying this, without waiting for Jiu Tinghan to answer, she hung up the phone, picked up the car keys, drove all the way to Baijuo's house, and entered the house unimpeded. Baijuo was talking on the phone with someone at the time. He turned around and saw Song Tao standing beside him. He said a few words and then hung up the phone. "You're here. You guessed I'd come." Song Tao's words were not a question but a statement, and the tone was extremely affirmative. When she arrived, she found that Baijuo had even opened the door, as if he had been waiting for her. Baijuo put down the phone in his hand, sat on the sofa and poured a cup of tea for Song Tao. His face was extremely tense. "Sit down, let's talk." Song Tao sat opposite Baijuo, took his tea and whispered, "Thank you." But now she was in no mood to drink tea and chat, so she went straight to the point and said, "Since you knew I would come, you should have guessed the purpose of my coming." Baijuo, who brought the information. Baijuo's hand paused. "Song Tao, have you forgotten? I said I would always protect you because I really like you. If I help you now, would that be considered helping my love rival?" Silence, still silence. Song Tao knew that Baijuo had no obligation to explain, and that she was the real culprit. She was just about to put down her tea and stand up when she heard Baijuo's voice. Chapter 25, Still Husband and Wife. "Sit down and I'll tell you." Baijuo felt sad and conflicted. His intuition told him that if Jiu survived this crisis safely, he would really have no chance. But he just refused to give up and wanted to give it one last try. The person who paid for the information was the CEO of that small company. His name is Wang Qixin. "Thanks." Baijuo curled his lips and smiled slightly. He was paying for his own actions. Regardless of anything else, he is also partly responsible for the Jiu family's current predicament. I sold the information to him. I am also the murderer. I should apologize to Jiu Tinghan. Song Tao didn't know how to answer, so she could only remain silent. After a moment, she stood up. "Jiu Tinghan doesn't need to say thank you to you, but I do. I have to go to Goo's company now, so repaying you will have to be postponed." As soon as she turned around, Baijuo spoke. "Song Tao, this incident made me realize that there is really a distance between me and Jiu Tinghan. If it were him, I don't think he would sell the information to others. People are selfish and kind, but some people will repent for their actions." After saying this, Song Tao hurried away and drove directly to the Jiu building. The radio in the car was also playing the news, and besides Jiu Shi, there was also Jiu Tinghan. Jiu Tinghan, the president of Jiu Corporation, said that he would still participate in the bidding meeting. Now that GU Corporation's stock price has fallen to the freezing point, countless shareholders are eager to sell their stocks. What should GU Corporation do? The traffic light ahead turned red. Song Tao stepped on the brakes and turned off the radio in annoyance. GU's building. The GU building rises high into the sky, and its transparent glass windows reflect the sunlight, making it seem like a fantasy world. Occasionally, a few passers-by passed by the GU building, and they would think of the news they had just seen, whisper a few words, and then hurried away. Everyone knew Song Tao's identity, so no one stopped her. When Song Tao walked into the hall, she found that the atmosphere at GU's house was completely different from usual, tense and depressing. She got on the elevator and arrived at the door of GU Tinghan's office without any obstruction. She reached out and knocked on the door. Boom boom boom. Come in. When Song Tao walked into the office, she saw GU Tinghan sitting in the office chair. Everything was exactly the same as before, except for the pile of documents on the desk and GU Tinghan's tired face. You're here. GU Tinghan stood up and walked to Song Tao's side, the last words Song Tao said before she hung up the phone still vivid in his mind. He said, "Actually, I can handle it, you don't have to come over. Haven't we completed the divorce procedures yet? We haven't even gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the divorce certificate, which means we are still husband and wife. Isn't it normal for me to help you if you get into trouble?" After Song Tao finished saying this, GU Tinghan's lips curled up into a faint smile, and a warm current finally flowed into his heart, which had been wrapped in the cold wind. "Okay. But the best way for you to help me is to stay home. I'll come find you once the problem is solved." Song Tao frowned and disagreed with what GU Tinghan said. She had an obligation to help the GU family get through this difficult time. If she didn't do this, she would regret it for the rest of her life. "Why? GU Tinghan, I can come to work at GU's and help them get through this difficult time." GU Tinghan was surprisingly calm. He lowered his eyes to look at Song Tao's anxious and determined expression and shook his head. "Song Tao, go back. You can't help GU's, and GU's doesn't need you." Song Tao didn't expect GU Tinghan to refuse so thoroughly. She believed in her ability to work and also believed that GU Tinghan knew this. Now she is like an ant on a brazier, extremely anxious. "GU Tinghan, don't be stubborn at this time. GU's company won't allow you to throw tantrums anymore." Compared to Song Tao's nervousness, GU Tinghan seemed extremely calm despite being at the center of the incident. After Song Tao finished speaking, he said, "Then Tao, are you going to use the dark web to help me?" The word dark web seems to have become a sensitive word between her and GU Tinghan. Song Tao was stunned for a moment and looked at GU Tinghan's dark and deep eyes for a long time. "How did you know that?" Song Tao's heart instantly tensed up. If GU Tinghan knew about the existence of the dark web, he should know most of what she had done. So, in GU Tinghan's eyes, would her current actions also be seen as the hypocrisy of the instigator? She was very afraid of GU Tinghan looking at her like this. GU Tinghan seemed to see her inner uneasiness, reached out and touched her hair, and said soothingly, "I just don't want you to be in danger, and you don't have to worry too much. The GU family has been standing strong for so many years, and it won't fall down easily." After that, GU Tinghan added, "I have a way, don't worry." But Song Tao wanted to say something but stopped herself. She felt extremely guilty. If she couldn't help, she would feel guilty to death. After thinking for a long time, Song Tao decided to try again. She couldn't just sit there and do nothing about it. She should help no matter from which perspective. "GU Tinghan, I have a responsibility for this matter. If you are worried about me showing up in public, then let me work behind the scenes. No matter what, you must let me help." Song Tao looked closely into GU Tinghan's eyes, waiting for his reply. GU Tinghan looked at Song Tao with great relief. There were two little selves in her eyes. As he looked at her, his tone softened. God knows he originally wanted to refuse coldly. "Okay, be my assistant." Before Song Tao could be happy, GU Tinghan said another sentence. "It's conditional." Song Tao was stunned for a moment. What conditions? There were only GU Tinghan and Song Tao in the empty office. Through the large and transparent floor-to-ceiling windows, they could overlook the city. The scenery was surprisingly beautiful. But GU Tinghan didn't have the time and energy to look at these things. All he had eyes for was Song Tao in front of him. For the first time, he felt nervous and hesitant, like a young boy who had just begun to fall in love, wanting to express his inner feelings but afraid of being rejected. Only then did Ji Tinghan understand that this kind of feeling is not limited by age. Anyone who falls in love with someone at any time will be like a young boy who is ignorant of the world. Song Tao, promise yourself to me, and don't hide anything from me after you're together, how about that? Chapter 26 Donated All. Song Tao opened her mouth, swallowed the words back, met the man's serious and determined gaze, but hastily avoided his sight. I have always been honest with my partners. After a little thought, she said calmly. Well, Mr. Ji, I still have some things to take care of, so I can only wait until Monday to go to work. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Tao turned and left. Looking at that slender figure, Ji Tinghan's lips curled up slightly, and his deep black eyes became much softer than usual. As long as he wants, there is nothing he can't get, including women. But Song Tao is different. She is a woman who comes with a cold wind and a sharp sword. As the saying goes, a 3-foot thick ice does not form overnight. If you want to subdue this woman, it would be harder than climbing a mountain. He has plenty of patience. Song Tao did not return to the Bay Villa, but went to the Song family's old house. She spent an entire night cleaning the villa herself. Miss, are we going to throw all these away? Butler Pai looked at the pile of garbage outside the door, and his face showed a bit of pain. Among the items discarded by Song Tao, there are some valuable antiques, jewelry and so on. Take it to the welfare home and donate it all. Song Tao wiped the sweat off his forehead and glanced at the pile of garbage with a hint of disgust in his eyes. These were all works by Song Yun and her daughter who spent a lot of money. She felt disgusted if she looked at them for even a second. Finally, he did not forget to instruct Butler Pai. Don't forget to donate in the name of Song Yun. Oh, and ask the reporters to make a big fuss about it. When you do good things, of course you have to let everyone know. Song Yun moved out in a hurry and didn't have time to take these things away. If she had known that they were donated, she would have gritted her teeth and swallowed them. Thinking of the expressions of the mother and daughter after seeing the news, Song Tao felt much more relaxed. I understand. Butler Pai felt comforted when he saw that Song Tao was still as smart and clever as before. He had been guarding the Song family, wasn't it just to wait for this day? Wait until the real master returned home. Late at night, as soon as Ji Tinghan entered the house, he noticed that something was different from usual. This property was for Song Tao to live in, but since his marriage, he has only returned a few times. It was after the two began discussing divorce that he became more and more fascinated by this place. Where is she? The man looked around but did not see Song Tao. The housekeeper saw that Ji Tinghan was in a bad mood and said carefully, Madam has moved out and said she wants to live back in her own home. After a pause, the housekeeper said, he left this afternoon. Although she said she was moving away, Song Tao didn't take anything with her except a suitcase. The dazzling array of clothes are still in the closet, the luxurious jewelry is still on the dressing table. She only brought a suitcase when she came, and it was the same when she left. Ji Tinghan's brows were tightly furrowed, and a hint of disappointment flashed across his eyes. When Song Tao had finished tidying up and was preparing to have a hearty meal, someone walked in with a proud look on his face. She looked at a group of men in black who were constantly moving things into their house, a look of confusion on her face. Madam, these are the housewarming gifts that Mr. sent you. I hope you like them. At last, the leading man looked at Song Tao with a flattering look on his face. She frowned. Ji Tinghan sent it. There are authentic ancient calligraphy and paintings, beautiful antique furniture, rare antique jades. Everything is of great value. Being so generous is indeed the man's style. But as the saying goes, one should be grateful for what one has received, so whether to accept it or not is a problem. The gentleman said that if you don't like it and refuse it, you can send it until the lady is satisfied. Before Song Tao could think carefully, the man in black spoke out of the blue. No, I'm very satisfied. Thank him for me. She rubbed her eyebrows, feeling helpless in her heart. Before going to bed, Song Tao wanted to call Ji Tinghan to say thank you. After all, she had not informed him in advance about moving out, but she was so sleepy that she slept in a daze until dawn. In the wealthy area of the third ring road of the city, a villa has been uneasy since morning. Mom, are you confused? My jewelry, brand name bags, and many high-end clothes were all donated to the orphanage in the mountains. Song Chuchu screamed while browsing the news on her phone. Song Yin also saw the news. Compared to her daughter's collapse, she seemed quite calm. Who else but her good niece could do such a good thing? Holding the bone china cup filled with coffee, she put the cup down heavily, rubbed her forehead and spoke as calmly as possible. How could I? The mountain orphanage can't help us buy a piece of land, so why should I donate it to them? Song Yin put down her phone, her face full of anger. Song Tao again. Those bags have been my treasures for many years. Many of them are limited editions and can no longer be bought. Song Tao actually threw all of them to the mountainous area, which was simply a provocation. Stop it, the housekeeper said the reporters are waiting outside the door and want to do an exclusive interview on this matter. Remember to smile nicely when you leave later, it will be in the newspaper. Song Yin gritted her teeth as she warned her daughter, but she felt like gnashing her teeth and swallowing her anger in her heart, wishing she could turn into a sharp sword and stab it into Song Tao's body. On the other side, Song Tao slept until she woke up naturally. I was stretching comfortably when the phone suddenly rang. Aren't you supposed to come to work? I don't allow lateness here. A familiar and deep voice came into my ears, and all my sleepiness disappeared immediately. I'll be there in a minute. Song Tao then remembered that she was going to be Gu Tinghan's personal assistant. Since you have decided to help the Gu family overcome this difficulty, you should work diligently. After a morning, Song Tao had become familiar with the basic business. Mr. Gu, please take a look. Still maintaining a business-like attitude, I handed the prepared documents to his desk and asked him to sign. At the same time, there was a knock on the door. The sound of high heels was heard at the door. Tinghan, I cooked for you today. I learned how to cook a few days ago. Before Gu Tinghan could respond, someone opened the door without permission, revealing a beautiful and delicate face with a carefully prepared lunchbox in her hand. Shenyang saw Gu Tinghan and Song Tao in the room. After being stunned for a moment, she greeted Song Tao generously and walked up to joke with the frowning Gu Tinghan. Tinghan, you are just working, but you always stay with your female assistant with the door closed. Even if I am not jealous, the employees outside will think too much. Song Tao couldn't help but frown when he heard what she said. After all, she and Gu Tinghan are a legal couple protected by the law, but this woman is really good at turning the tables. Gu Tinghan was displeased with her for intruding without permission. Shenyang pointed to the time on the clock, spread his hands, and said in a relaxed manner. I was just joking, don't mind it. It's almost time for dinner. I've told you many times not to forget to eat because of work. Chapter 27, More Suitable Than Mr. Gu. She came into the office and just glanced at Song Tao. Apart from the first two sentences, her eyes were then fixed on Gu Tinghan, and every sentence she spoke was about him. I won't bother you for now, Mr. Gu. I need to hand this document over to the design department before 3 p.m. I'll come get it later. Song Tao looked at Shenyang placing an exquisite lunchbox on the table, and the aroma was fragrant. She also interacted closely with Gu Tinghan from time to time. Song Tao narrowed her eyes, suppressed the sudden bitterness and embarrassment in her heart, and made up an excuse to leave the office. Shenyang looked at Song Tao leaving Gu Tinghan's office, feeling secretly proud, and her mood also improved a lot. She came here with two purposes. Not to mention that Song Yun knew that she and Gu Tinghan were old acquaintances and wanted to use her to gain some benefits from Gu's company. It was worth it just for this man. If he hadn't gone abroad to study, I should have been the woman accompanying him. Thinking of this, Shenyang took the initiative to step forward and picked up a piece of sushi and placed it next to Gu Tinghan's mouth. Tinghan, this is made with your favorite salmon, try it. Gu Tinghan's unhappy voice sounded coldly, have you had enough of the trouble? Shenyang was stunned for a moment, then curled the corners of her mouth, pretending not to understand what he meant. She put the sushi back on the box. Don't you want to eat salmon? I'll give you another piece. Gu Tinghan narrowed his eyes, looked at the forced smile on her face, and interrupted her unexpectedly. Everyone has left, why are you doing this? Shenyang twitched the corner of her mouth, feeling his indifference, her heart couldn't help but feel cold, and she frowned slightly. You don't like me doing this? Then I'll be more careful next time. Don't be so mean to me. His eyes were filled with complex emotions as he gazed at Shenyang, which blended together making it difficult to guess what he was feeling at the moment. Song Tao returned to his seat listlessly, touching his chest subconsciously, feeling bitter. Knock knock. She raised her head, came back to her senses, and saw Shenyang's bright and smiling eyes. Song Ju, this is for you. Gu's business is so busy right now, and you follow Tinghan in and out all day, so you need to eat more. An exquisite box made by Shenyang appeared on the table. She sensed a hint of hostility and warning in Shenyang's eyes. Song Tao knew that she was declaring her sovereignty. Shenyang raised the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a faint smile, and glanced at Song Tao, leaving a sentence. Of course, I also hope that Assistant Song can understand my hard work. After Shenyang finished speaking, she returned to the office in her red high heels without looking back. Throughout the afternoon, Song Tao was in a very uncomfortable mood while handling official business, and his efficiency was lower than before. But fortunately, I completed the day's work as usual. Before leaving get off work, she was tidying up the documents on her desk when she suddenly felt her cell phone vibrate. She opened it and saw that it was a call from her senior Lin Yi. Senior, what's wrong? Dao, I now have some clues about the matter you asked me to help you investigate. Lin Yi's news immediately pulled her out of her sadness. She grabbed her phone tightly and asked quickly, really? It's almost time to get off work. Are you free to come out for dinner later? It's hard to explain these things to you over the phone. Song Tao now wished she could leave the company and find Lin Yi immediately. The most important thing for her now is to help her father find out the truth of the matter and clear his name. His father died in a strange and undignified manner. Someone with ulterior motives slandered my father for embezzling huge sums of money. This is a shame for my father, who has always been very concerned about his reputation. It was also because of this that he did not survive to the end and was murdered. Good. Time passed quickly, and at 7 o'clock, Song Tao left the company after get off work. As she left the revolving door, she suddenly saw a colleague from the company nearby stop and look at a luxury car not far away. Song Tao's expression changed, and she recognized at a glance that the car was Lin Yi's car. Lin Yi also saw Song Tao coming out of GU's company through the glass. When everyone was still curious about the identity of the car's owner, they suddenly saw a pair of straight and slender legs coming out of the car. A gentle and handsome man appeared. His tall and handsome figure instantly attracted the attention of nearby employees. Dao, here. When Song Tao saw the senior's car, she was shocked and walked past it with her face covered, not wanting to be the focus of everyone's attention. She put down her hands that were hiding her face, an awkward smile appeared on her face, and she twitched the corners of her mouth. Some colleagues who she often interacted with passed by and suddenly became curious about her affairs. Assistant Song, who is this? Your suitor. I really envy you for having such a good husband like Mr. Gu and such a handsome friend. I'm afraid I will never be as blessed as you, Assistant Song. Look at that man's looks and temperament. You and him are simply a perfect match made in heaven. He is much more suitable than Mr. Gu. Bar, I shouldn't say that. Please don't take it as an offense. In response to their flattering praise from her colleagues, Song Tao quickly waved her hands, trying to explain things to them. Before she could explain it to everyone, they said with a smile, Assistant Song, please don't tell Mr. Gu what we said. We just think this man treats you well. Song Tao simply didn't want to explain, otherwise the whole thing would be made worse. She could only laugh dryly and smiled perfunctorily with them. Dao, get in the car, it's getting late. Lin Yi walked not far from her at this time and urged her. Her colleagues winked at Song Tao, and she got into Lin Yi's car under the terrifying gazes. What she didn't know was that just as the car left the company, Jiu Tinghan appeared at the door. And those gossipy colleagues gathered around and analyzed Song Tao's new relationship, and Jiu Tinghan heard everything. Hearing that Song Tao was picked up by a man after get off work, he couldn't help but frown. Who took him away? A voice interrupted their conversation without seeming to be a peacekeeper. Someone answered without thinking, that person seems to be the young master of the Lin family, named Lin Yi. Our Assistant Song is so lucky.